years since the British people voted to take back control of their money, their borders, their laws, their waters, and to leave the European Union. And earlier this year, we saw the that.
Can you name one rule
Refugees.
that you don't like?
Refugees.
Refugees is a rule.
Watchdogs Legion imagines a dystopian vision of a post-Brexit Britain.
We'll do our best. What's the situation?
It's not good. Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
It's good.
You know what one of my favourite movie scenes of all time is? Nope, not that one. Not that one either. This. School of Rock 2004. Prime Jack Black. Dewey Finn, impersonating an elementary school teacher, tries to teach a class full of academically gifted kids about the concept of rebellion. It's an ingenious scene on a few different levels. Dewey's costume, with the bow tie and muted colours, is a cartoonish stereotype of what a teacher is, a childish idea of what Dewey believes a person in authority to be. The characterisation of the children being smart but not worldly makes the conflict of the scene quite enthralling. They question who the man is, and Dewey, being from the 80s rock and roll generation, struggles to tell them in a way they understand. Cronyism, fascism, authoritarianism, Trumpism, it's all just the man. There isn't room for nuance in Dewey's interpretation of rebellion because they all come under one banner. Even the strict head teacher, Miss Mullins, she's the man. In 2016, the man, through careful manipulation, managed to convince 51% of British voters to vote against their own self-interests and remove the UK from the European Union. The man, in this case being far-right politicians and media moguls, somehow brainwashed the electorate into thinking that they were sticking it to the man by siding with the man. Nigel Farage and Aaron Banks presented themselves as part of the people, the sort of guys you could have a beer with, despite Farage himself being worth $4 million. But no, they weren't the man, they were just guys, apparently. The European Union was the man. The media elite was the man. The Conservative government, with figures such as the Prime Minister, who was campaigning to remain in the European Union, was the man. And people bought it, hook, line and sinker. They guzzled up the lies and the xenophobia and the false promises and the malignment of experts because they were told that anybody who thought Brexit was a fantasy was just part of the man. Brexit split the country into factions. Serious concerns about Brexit were waved away as Project Fear as part of information control. Specially devised social media algorithms ensured that a very complex political question could be boiled down to an outright lie that the EU wants to kill our cuppa. Families were torn apart. Professors of economics were laughed out of the room. There were literally fights in the street and tears in our parliament. The BBC lost all credibility. The Prime Minister, coward that he was, resigned as a result of the outcome. Death threats were sent to the homes of those who campaigned to remain. An MP, Joe Cox, was murdered by a Brexiteer terrorist. The political divide grew wider with 2 snap elections, which happened in the space of 4 years.
I can't stand this. There's too much politics going on at the moment. Why does she need to do it?
People lost their businesses, workers were laid off. The recession which looms as a result of COVID-19 is predicted to be twice as worse in the UK than elsewhere as a direct result of our shoddy trade agreement. Scotland and Northern Ireland are exploring independence more than ever before. Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, Michael Gove, and every single lying Brexiteer has walked away from this calamity with a hefty slice of money, and the country continues to descend into madness. Ubisoft saw this, all of it, and thought,
Huh, that'll make a fun game about grannies blowing stuff up.
This had better be fucking good.
Watchdogs Legion isn't just a bloated, buggy, misguided, boring mess. It's also borderline offensive in its handling of the very serious crisis that my country is in. I didn't think that a game could frustrate me as much as Marvel's Avengers, but hot damn Ubisoft, points for trying. Americans, was this how it felt when Far Cry 5 released and they teased that it was going to be about the militarization of the far right, and it just ended up being apolitical nonsense? Watchdogs meets Brexit sounds like a fascinating, complex match made in heaven, but what we got was an abomination. This video is more than just a straight up critique of Legion's game design. I'll be exploring those in depth, true, but I thought it would be particularly fascinating to assess Ubisoft's political philosophy and Legion's interpretation of post-Brexit Britain directly. What does it try to say, if it says anything at all? This means we are getting political in this video. I know a lot of you joined the channel from my Bloodborne analysis, and I've had a couple of comments asking me to discuss some of my personal politics in more depth, so figured using Legion as a vehicle to do that could be quite fun. Or horrible. Probably horrible. We'll see. To be completely transparent with you, I bear no ill will towards those who voted for Brexit in 2016. The European Union is extremely imperfect, and there are some legitimate reasons for wanting to leave. A perfect example is that their current regulations and the common market itself lets a scalping parasite in Italy buy and resell a PlayStation 5, and in the EU, our proposed anti-scalping laws wouldn't apply to them. I just hate liars, opportunists, and bigots, and both Leave campaigns were fully stocked with them. Discourse and feedback, as always, is welcome in the comments below. Spoilers ahead, and let's get Brexity. Part 1. U is for Ubisoft. We're not letting death of the author get in the way of this one. Just like J.K. Rowling's transphobia, the corruption and ineptitude which surrounds Ubisoft as a company absolutely has implications on the products they create, and Watchdogs Legion is a prime example of this. So let's have a look at the Mog show that is Ubisoft and how they marketed the game.
So the marketing of the game actually happens in two parts. There's what I call inbound marketing, which is informing the team how they can develop a game that better fits the needs of the market.
The Ubisoft marketing team is just fascinating to me. It's been rumoured for years that it's not the company's creative directors which come up with the game ideas, but the marketing team themselves. What's hot right now? BLM. Ah, well, let's make a Tom Clancy game which uses BLM iconography as the enemy. That'll sell. America's facing a political crisis and far-right nationalism is on the rise. What if we made a game about a cult and slapped some American flags all over it? That'll sell. What if we use Brexit to sell a Watchdogs game? That's got to work. Oh, wait, we completely butchered the discourse surrounding these philosophies because we are total clowns? Well, better whop out a half-arsed apology.
We're sorry.
Again. They continue to walk along the tightrope of taking a political stance and being apolitical in their press briefings and showcases. But then, would you expect anything else from the product and brand marketing manager, Adrian Gabigny, who is one of the many executives who has been labelled with sexual abuse allegations? Speaking of the abuse allegations, they are particularly relevant when examining Watchdogs' portrayal of a politically divided UK, because some of the company's most infamous comments about how they handle politics have come from sexual abusers. Ubisoft's executives have made random or nonsensical statements on the developer's political affiliation numerous times, just to backtrack on them later. Let's count down some of the company's greatest offenders. Chief Executive Officer Sergei Haskowet, who drugged female colleagues, has told his development teams, "We don't need to censor the politics of our games because our teams censor themselves." Best friend of Haskowet and sex offender enabler Yves Guillermo, Ubisoft's CEO, has gone on the record in the past as stating that Ubisoft's games, quote, don't make political statements, instead the company makes games where the goal is to make people think. Creative director Terry Spire, politically inept but not a sex abuser to be clear, has stated, quote, "We're definitely not making any political statements. The goal isn't to reflect on any of the things that are happening in the current world. We cannot be openly political in our games. It's bad for business."
Then they came for the journalists. And I did not speak out, because I was not a journalist.
Yeah, keep telling yourselves that. Ubisoft have been flirting with politicizing their games for years, and it's about time we all woke up and smelled the fire. The sex abuse allegations aside, they've been taking us all for a non-consensual ride. They're trying to appeal to everyone whilst appealing to no one. They're capitalizing on very real issues in our modern culture for the sake of the iconography, not for the sake of exploring the broader political landscape with any kind of sincerity or curiosity. Far Cry 5 is the ultimate example of this. Our villains are all American extremists, with serious similarities to the Westboro Baptist Church above all else. Their doctrine is bastardized Christianity, until it isn't. Their colours are red, white and blue, until they aren't. A lot of their slogans and phraseology screams "Make America Great Again," until it doesn't. Clint Hawking, the creative director of Watchdogs Legion, seemed to be going against the Ubisoft grain in earlier interviews though. Speaking to the BBC prior to the game's release, he stated, quote, "Well, I look at it as a creator of culture. It's our responsibility to look at the things that are happening in the world around us and have something to say about that. To create something that's meaningful, that people can look at and engage with, and it speaks to the world that they live in." That's a really different slant from what his colleagues had said previously. Perhaps Watchdogs Legion was going to be the beginning of a new era in Ubisoft. One where the developer was committed to owning the political philosophies their games advertised to us. Christ, the fact that the game explicitly stated that it was post-Brexit, naming the event by name, was already a whole step further than what Far Cry 5 had done with the rise of Trumpism. And look, the bad guy is called Nigel, and one of the secondary villains looks like Theresa May. It's a little on the nose, sure, but it looks like the game was going to double down on saying something about the state of the UK. About how information control, xenophobia, and an untrustworthy media were directly to blame for hospitalising the country. Even the most common image used for the game, the rebel wearing a pig mask, directly links to conservative cronyism, relating to the now infamous story of then Prime Minister David Cameron putting his Johnson in a pig when he was in university. Allegedly. Sorry, let's not get sued. Allegedly. I mean, who am I kidding? We all know he did it, the swine. And then the ads and promos began. And we're going to look at two specific ones here to see how Ubisoft sold Legion to the masses. Because you'd be surprised how many similarities there are between how Ubi sold Legion and Brexiteers sold Brexit. Both are shallow fantasies which don't represent the final product.
Then they came for the protesters. I did not speak out, because I was not a protester.
This is the live-action trailer Ubisoft revealed in their Ubisoft Forward in October 2020. You might remember it. It's the one where Yves Guillermo apologised for the abuse culture in his company and pretended he didn't know anything about it. The trailer warps Martin Niemöller's famous quotation about Nazi Germany. "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a socialist." You know the one. It's a powerful message, and it's phrased here with foreigners, protesters, and journalists. Three groups which have risen up in political discourse since the Brexit debate happened. It's lacking in gameplay and more focused on game feel. This is a game which is going to explore the UK of the 2010s. That's what it's promising. Lead an underground rebellion against an authoritarian government which has risen up since Brexit. This is a game where you'll get to take down nationalism, fascism, and cronyism. It's a game which looks like it will incorporate Watch Dogs 2's parkour system into its traversal, leaping on top of buses and skidding about the place. The GBB, the news organisation which is clearly the Watch Dogs universe's version of the BBC, is nothing but a government spokespiece. The trailer ends with a 3-word slogan: "Reclaim your future." apt, seeing as those speaking out on the side of Remain since the Brexit vote was cast has constantly hammered home this sense that our future has been upheaved by the banishment of free trade and free movement. It's an ad which, for all intents and purposes, is clearly focused on tugging at the current strings of the British people. Let's look at another focused on gameplay for the sake of fairness.
Morning class, these are diapers. You're going to want to put those on because when I tell you about this game, you are going to shit your pants.
Who mogging wrote this? Okay, so this ad is less focused on the Brexit of it all and instead is examining the game's play as anyone feature. This ultimately is the mechanic which the game was sold on, and I've reserved an entire section later to talking about why and how it fails so monstrously, but this ad is actually one of the reasons. Ubisoft were so proud of this system, weren't they? They were so certain that we were in fact going to shit our pants. It makes so many promises. Watchdogs Legion has 0 NPCs, it states. You can play as literally anyone. This is a half-truth. But it set our expectations high. It did its job well. No matter how disingenuous and pretentious it is, it made us think about all of the potential that the system had. And yeah, alright Ubisoft, you coloured me curious, like a dog sniffing its own arse. Good job, marketing team, not you, Andrian. But these two ads set up the promise of Watchdogs Legion, and it makes them a suitable baseline for us to compare the final product to. Ubisoft promised a game which deconstructs the rise of populism in the UK, examines Brexit through a critical lens, with an interesting system that thematically shows how anyone can rise up and fight tyranny in a fun and engaging way. Are we all agreed that this is what the game's concept and marketing promised us? I can't hear you, but I'm assuming you said yes, so good, because here's creative director Clint Hawking completely contradicting what he said previously.
Brexit in our game is not sort of the cause of the problems that we're depicting in the game world. Brexit, the causes of Brexit really are the causes of the problems in our world, and that's really how we address it.
So with all of this in mind, it's time to jump into the game itself. Does Watchdogs Legion bring anything interesting to the table? Does it have a particular perspective on the digital manipulation and bigoted goading which influenced the Brexit result? Is its play as anyone system as deep and successful as they claimed? Does it have a story which is worth telling and has something to say? Does it capitalise on the fresh sense of freedom that Watch Dogs 2 gave the player? And most importantly of all, is it fun? Well, spoiler alert, the answer is Part 2. D is for Dalton. Legion's opening is actually successful in fulfilling my 3 rules for an effective game opening. It tutorializes the necessary gameplay, sets up our main characters, and establishes a solid game feel. But just because it achieves what it sets out to do, doesn't mean it's beyond criticism. Because what it sets out to do is as fresh and interesting as mouldy bread. In my critique of Jedi Fallen Order, it's good by the way, like and subscribe, I discussed how that game used very good lipstick to cover up and forgive the blemishes that can be found in its level design and mechanical inconsistency. Watch Dogs Legion's opening also tries to apply lipstick to its tutorial to suck the player into its world, but it comes across as irreversibly shallow and cynical. It comes in 2 shades, James Bond and the Houses of Parliament.
What's our status?
Perimeter security's down, but plenty of your flying friends about.
Wolf Dalton Wolf is ex-Secret Service, speeding towards the House of Commons on a speedboat in the dead of night, unashamedly dressed in a tuxedo. You won't be surprised to know that Ubisoft have been slavering for a crack at the Bond IP for years. In fact, Splinter Cell was originally pitched as a Bond game, and it was only after they were turned down that they drew their attention to Sam Fisher. God, I bet they were raging that Eidos are getting a well-deserved crack at it. Wolf's first name, Dalton, is even a direct reference to Timothy Dalton, one of the most underrated Bonds. 007 has been a mascot for British patriotism for years, always fighting for Queen and country and traditionally battling a foreign threat. And if you wanted a microcosm of how Legion presents the UK, this is all the evidence you would need. Legion's UK is presented so cartoonishly, like a a tourist trying to describe their holidays, but it's constantly contrasted with the game's oh so serious, dark, brooding tone. Hey look, it's like James Bond. Also, people are starving in the streets, but oh look, you're breaking into the House of Commons. Also, this is a very serious allegory for Western fascism. Are we clever yet? Are we clever yet? Are we clever yet? This is lipstick on a pig done wrong. Our hackable abilities, once presented as phones and hackable toys, feel like gadgets in Dalton's hands. DedSec doesn't feel like a ragtag band of misfits like it did in Watchdogs 2. It feels like an underground, hyper-organised militia, with Sabine in our ear like M, and with Bagley chipping about like a cybernetic Q. The tutorial screams espionage. Legion's opening section captures the overall tone of the game perfectly, because a lot of the story will feel like this. It's just a shame that this is the wrong tone for Watchdogs. You sneak through the tunnels beneath the House of Commons, cracking down on balaclavaed mercenaries who are standing guard in an effort to defuse the bombs they've planted. The opening involves us jumping into cameras and arming electrical boxes as traps to clean out a room of thugs. It's standard gameplay that we've seen before. You need to sneak up behind them and press a button for a one-hit takedown. Old, stale stealth mechanics which don't belong in a game which keeps marketing itself as being groundbreaking and revolutionary, but this isn't the most offensive part of Watch Dogs gameplay. So far, it's been a copy-paste of Aiden Pearce's introduction, except with some James Bond aesthetics slapped on top of it. No, where the game really begins to suffer is when you enter the House of Commons themselves. Dalton notes that there are numerous bombs planted around, and he looks to deactivate the transmitter, and for the first of many times, we enter into the game's second most common sequence. We need to shoot bad guys while Bagley does all the hacking work.
Whoa, what the fuck am I looking at? It appears Parliament is not the only target. More bombs are going live as we speak.
Suddenly the game goes into full third-person shooter mode. Bam-a-lam, shoot the guy, watch the bar creep up to 100% while Bagley does all the interesting stuff. This isn't about hackers anymore, it's about spies and militia and shooting thugs with your Walther PPK under the instruction of Edgy M and Computer Q. And if you want to play along at home, try taking a drink every time the game forces you to sit near a terminal and shoot things while Bagley hacks the system. All of this comes to a head when the bomb gets defused. We go charging through the House of Commons with a machine gun, shooting faceless henchmen, and I can't tell you if this is a shoddy reboot of Splinter Cell or DLC for The Division. The entire section is exceedingly linear. The stadium that Aiden fought through in Watch Dogs 1 and the facility that Marcus infiltrated in Watch Dogs 2 at least had options for the player to consider while exploring. Neither game was perfect, but the level design was more interesting than this. Marcus had a multi-leveled complex to clamber through with a small handful of guards. There was no bombastic blastathon in Watch Dogs 2 opening moments, and you may have hated his hipster teammates, for the record I didn't, but at least they didn't step in and take the interesting hacker stuff off our hands so we could shoot some pillocks in the head. The game does this constantly, which is why it's an effective opening in demoing what the rest of the missions will be like. Every mission shields itself with an interesting real-life location, when in reality what you're actually doing and the mission structure itself is one of 3 mission types. Just like with Brexit, Watch Dogs Legion doesn't think past the first sentence of its mission descriptions. With Brexit, it was the 3-word slogan, "Take back control." Cool, okay, that sounds like something I'd want. What is this control that we're taking back? What EU rules directly impede my life?
Which rule are you most looking forward to not having to obey anymore, Dave?
Everything.
Yeah, but just give me one.
We decide.
Just give me one, Dave.
We decide
one rule, Dave.
as a country.
Dave, one rule.
Any
yeah, I know,
rules.
any rule. Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's labour, whether it's trading
Yeah,
standards.
exactly. So go on, give me one. What
We
trading
decide.
standard? Go. Which one?
Doesn't matter which one, all of them.
With Watch Dogs Legion, it's the tourist factor. Hey look, you're going to scale Big Ben, the game says with a cheeky glint in its eye. Buy the game so you can climb to the top of Big Ben. Okay, cool video game, that sounds interesting. How am I climbing Big Ben? Well, I need to use my wits, hack some platforms to climb up. Damn, I dunno, maybe we didn't think about making the mission interesting or engaging. How about a Spiderbot? What about breaking into the House of Commons in the dead of night to stop it from being blown up? An homage to our history of gunpowder, treason, and plot. That sounds interesting. But, oh wait, no, what you're actually doing is standing near a laptop and shooting goons. Dalton, disconnecting the bomb, learns that there are 3 other bombs. The Tone Conference Centre, Earl's Court Station, and King's College Hospital are all about to go up in smoke. We've been duped, but there's a transmitter conveniently placed on the roof of the Commons. Dalton races up and out, and as we deactivate the transmitter, we're introduced to the game's central baddie, Zero Day. And this is where the game began to officially lose me. For a start, we've just jumped through some extremely convoluted hoops to get here. The game's opening, just like with the rest of the story, keeps moving the goalposts in a lazy way to present a tale with twists and turns. So, in the space of 10 minutes, Dalton has deactivated a bomb, Bagley's had his memory wiped, we've learned that there are 3 other bombs, deactivated the transmitter for those, and then despite all of this work, Zero Day has a doomsday switch on their end which makes things explodey anyway. So why was there a transmitter in the first place then? Like, what was the purpose of the transmitter on the roof of the Commons? Was it just a dummy switch? Why present all of these obstacles for Dalton to clamber over if the goal was always just to frame him and DedSec for the bombs to go off? The graffiti that the goons were putting up in the tunnels below were more than enough to frame our hacktivists. Well, there's one answer to all of these questions. The game's wider conspiracy isn't particularly clever, just extremely convoluted in the individual missions and the wider story. And the purpose of this is to make the conspiracy seem more complex than it actually is. When you boil the story down to its most basic plot, it's actually a very standard narrative. Zero Day hired some criminals to plant some bombs, meaning that a private company could gain control of London. That's it. Basic. Zero Day themselves doesn't add nuance or a secondary dimension to the game's message. It just adds some fallible whataboutery. Rather than concentrate slowly on authoritarianism, which in itself is already too expansive a political philosophy to actually say much at all, Legion introduces Zero Day in an effort to provide another side to fascism. Zero Day is an anarcho-terrorist organisation, the sort of force that right-wing pundits paint Antifa as. You must destroy to rebuild is their core philosophy, and it's as childish and maniacal as storming the Capitol building because the Orange Man told you to. It's this event, the Zero Day bombing, which causes the military coup in London. All pretense that this was going to be an examination of how fascism can take root in a country, or how misinformation and digital manipulation play a role in far-right populism, is intensely scrapped as we get our montage of events building up to 10 years later. 3 important facts are relayed to us. 1, that it's a private military firm, Albion, which is our fascist force, not the seat of government itself. 2, that they've just locked down London, not the rest of the UK or even England. This is a city-specific crisis. And 3, that over time, inexplicably, the news coverage of resistance to Albion is downplayed as fake news. You can imagine my dismay at the first 2 of these facts. Ubisoft quivered in their boots and didn't stick to the promise that their marketing gave us, that this game would be looking at a dystopian post-Brexit Britain. Brexit isn't really an explicit part of the setup, it's barely set dressing, and it's not a radicalised government that we're battling, it's a corporation. To go back to Dewey Finn and School of Rock, we're just fighting the man. In 1933, the Reichstag building in Germany, which housed their parliament, was set ablaze. In the days which followed, Hitler blamed it on communists and Jews, and a few weeks later, he was put into power. The parallel between the Zero Day bombing leading to Albion's control and the Reichstag fire with Nazi control is pretty goddamn on the nose. It would be so much more interesting if the zero-day bombing was influenced by Brexit somehow, a radical extremist far-right group, rather than some megalomaniacal hologram ranting about destroying to rebuild. Or better yet, scrap the false flag attack altogether. Watchdogs 2 was a game about what tomorrow would be like, and that's what made it legitimately interesting. It lampooned Silicon Valley like we recognise it. Legion promised us a game which would lampoon Brexit and populism like we recognise it. Instead, we've got The Division Hacker Edition. How you get to a fascist state is simply more relevant and more interesting in today's world than stick it to the man. Seeing as Ubisoft are so desperate to double down on the Nazi imagery, let's adhere to that metaphor. We've heard thousands of stories about Hitler in power. We know what fascism looks like when it comes down to stormtroopers, but less and less do we hear about how we got there. What does it look like in the early days? What are the warning signs? How does a free country fall into despotism? Maybe let's look at how the information age can influence that. Instead, nah, you're fighting jackboot thugs and driving through checkpoints for your game time. Yawn.
I need to assemble a team, but I can't reboot DedSec alone. Let me break into London CTOS and see who's available.
With Dalton dead, the game puts the player in the shoes of Sabine. DedSec has either been arrested or murdered, so she needs to hire some new recruits. But wait, no, we're not playing as Sabine, we're playing as a Spiderbot, because 80% of this game is foraging Spiderbot! and yeah, we'll get there. Because all of her skilled hacktivists are out of commission, Sabine takes the natural, logical next step, finding some randomer on the street and recruiting them to the cause by whispering in their ear. We get to choose from a long list of some of the ugliest possible candidates. Oh my god, On my first playthrough, I picked Papa Georginu because he was a programmer and had a drone, so felt like he was at least suited to DedSec's mission. We possess his body, wearing his skin like a digital Leatherface, and set out into the open world to spark an uprising. Which brings us to Part 3. P is for playing as no one. Following Dalton's demise and the zero-day bombings, the game slaps its shiny Play As Anyone feature on full display, and it's what dominates the next 4 hours of gameplay, so we need to talk about why it's a failure of a game system in principle and in practice. I've seen numerous reviews and comments about how the system is ambitious but doesn't stick the landing, and yes, it's ambitious, but a lot of things are ambitious. Crapping out of an airplane window is ambitious. Conning an entire country into voting against their own interests is ambitious. Let's walk through our first recruitment mission and use this as a baseline to look at how it works.
The favour. The more literally, the better.
You want to hire out muscle? That's not what we're about, mate.
Fine. Lots of ways to make a man suffer.
So outside DedSec HQ, I spotted this guy, Colin, hanging about. I profiled him and he popped up as being, let's say, malleable, so we sauntered right up to him and told him we're DedSec in broad daylight in front of thousands of drones and cameras. Colin has an issue which has absolutely nothing to do with Albion, or the regime that London has found itself under, and offers us a little something, you know, a you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours deal. He's a thief, and his old criminal boss ripped him off, so we need to nab a car and drive it into the Thames. So we drive to the other side of town, break into a warehouse, steal the car, and fulfill our end of the bargain. In return, Colin pledges life and limb to DedSec. All because we helped him nick a car. The two don't exactly correlate. Play As Anyone relies on procedural generation. As you wander around London, any model walking London streets can be hooked up to DedSec's network. As the marketing says, there are millions of characters for us to potentially recruit to DedSec, from cops, to doctors, to construction workers, to Albion soldiers. Each character has an independent schedule which they follow, such as playing darts or going to a graveyard to mourn. This is a system which is, at first, very similar to most modern open-world games. I think we all remember the moment we realised a cowboy in Red Dead Redemption 2 actually went to work, then went to the saloon, and drunkenly staggered home in the dead of night for his wife to shout at him. The difference with Watchdogs is it tells us what they're doing, so there's an added level of depth to the activities they undertake. The system randomly generates civilians using a carefully crafted algorithm, similar to how NPCs are typically generated in a game like, say, Grand Theft Auto or Watch Dogs 2. They assign assets like hairstyles, clothes, or skin colour. But Legion also generates a full backstory, plucking from a list of career possibilities or filling in the gaps with a different keyword. This character is a tattoo artist who has a crowbar. This character is a programmer who spends time on the dark web. If you pass a character in the street but don't take the time to profile them or take an interest in them, the game just deletes them from the system and replaces them with another randomly generated character once you're far enough away. But if you do take an interest in them, like I did with Colin, the game saves them to the cityscape for you to return to later. The Watch Dogs developers call this up-resing, essentially upgrading a non-playable character to a playable character. The system also starts generating this up-resed character more prominently as you go about your business. You'll start seeing them more and more, and this is where one of the system's many problems start to appear. By hour 10 of your playtime, you'll start to feel like characters you've profiled are stalking you. Dennis the football fan will keep appearing outside of a subway station you've fast travelled to, no matter where in the city you are. Worse yet, if a character hasn't been up-resed, they do not follow the routine the algorithm has set for them. They give off the illusion that they do, but this system isn't as deep as Ubisoft have claimed in the press briefings. Take Judy Padmore. She's off to the Winterline pub to drink. Cracking. Let's follow her, intercept her, and recruit her to DedSec. Oh, wait, no, Judy, where are you going? Oh, she's got on the subway and despawned. Almost every NPC will fall into this path eventually. The system uses day-night cycles like we saw in Watch Dogs 2. It is not some masterstroke evolutionary tech which will make us, well,
You're gonna shit your pants.
The second system which contributes to playing as anyone is called Census, essentially a databank of personality traits and how they relate to each other. If a character is procedurally generated as a bartender, Census automatically attributes a realistic salary to this character. It keeps the information feeling consistent. But Ubisoft bit off far more than they could chew with this system. It's ironic that a game that deals with the dangers of artificial intelligence depended so heavily on an unregulated AI system to sell this concept. Just look at this moment where a player found a procedurally generated character whose background information led to one inevitable conclusion: a pediatrician who recently ended a personal relationship with a patient, also known as a nonce. Also known as the Duke of York. This is a drastic example. It's inevitable that mistakes will be made with a system like this. But there are these bizarre contradictions everywhere. I remember playing as a police officer who grumbled on a mission about how much he hates the coppers. Governor. But the greatest problem with Play as Anyone is what it psychologically does to a player. If the purpose of Legion is to give a sense that anybody can be the hero and that every citizen can contribute to overthrowing a corrupt government, then you should be looking to add value to every playable character, right? But Legion's system forces the player to see a hierarchy in the population. A construction worker can summon a cargo drone. They have a uniformed access to a building site. The 65-year-old politician, who in a game about overthrowing fascists should have value, has a bad back, lower mobility, and no special abilities which contribute to the team. And if they can't offer value to DedSec, they're useless, meaning you begin to view these people that Ubisoft is so desperate for us to inhabit as subhuman, which isn't a healthy mindset to have when you're supposed to be bringing everyday heroes together. The idea that anyone, yes, even your racist gran, can see the light and fight the man is at odds with the active gameplay which goes into searching for a successful operative to play as. Albion operatives are the most overpowered characters in the game, which again is completely at odds with the game's theme of underdogs rising up against the system with a capital S. This is primarily because of how the mechanics have been integrated, and we'll discuss that in more depth in the next part. But the fact that an armed soldier with a light machine gun and body armor is always the strongest option for any mission completely misses what made the hacktivist stuff so fun in the previous game. This is primarily because it doesn't matter how unique a character's backstory first appears. The fact that the game limits those hacking abilities and nerfs every character's gadget abilities means that hacking is discouraged. Even some of the unique passive abilities are next to useless. Later in the game, you need to infiltrate the GBB. The doorman told my builder operative that he wasn't on the list to get into the TV studio, so I thought, okay, well, I have a celebrity operative. They'd be more likely to be recognised by the doorman. Maybe they could saunter in and claim to be an interviewee.
Please move along. If you're not on the list, you're not getting it.
Nope. After sitting through a 30-second loading screen to change to another operative, I got an identical cutscene where the doorman told my famous musician to go boil her head. You're not encouraged to experiment with your different operatives. If you scope out your 50th warehouse and decide that maybe playing as a criminal would be the best option, you need to jump into the menu, select your operative, and then sit through an achingly long loading screen while they load in. I'm not kidding when I say these are so long that I was able to make myself a cup of tea, come back, and they would still be loading. And for any of you curious, I buy PG Tips because that's the brand Nigel Farage hates because they openly supported Black Lives Matter.
The Chinese are now buying up British schools.
People voted for this guy. This all boils down to how unsuccessful Legion's system is in making the player have an affinity for their team. By the end of the story, you won't care about DedSec. The lack of a main character, manually crafted by a team of writers and artists, means that the player doesn't get to experience emotional beats. When Marcus and the gang experienced a personal loss in Watchdogs 2, I felt that. I watched them mourn. I empathised with their struggle because I was Marcus. In Legion, all of the characters are unnecessary to the greater whole. They don't matter. We begin to view the people of London in the same way that Albion does. Disposable. If my construction worker dies or gets hospitalised, then screw him. I've got 2 other builders that I recruited earlier. This wasn't for a lack of trying on my end. I always tried to roleplay as an individual character. I played as a secret agent during the Secret Service mission chain because it gave me the opportunity to develop a personal arc for them. But the game doesn't give you the opportunity to really make any of your characters the star of the show, and you begin to get irritated with how little depth these characters actually have outside of their census data. They're husks for you to inhabit, not characters, and no improvements on the Play As Anyone system will solve that. It's a battle the developers can't win. This was simply the wrong story to introduce this system with, and nowhere is this clearer than how missions are given to the player.
Enforcement. We also know he's partnered with Titus, which is never good. Titus does other work with Albion. Nasty shit like autonomous weapons, human targeting algorithms.
It feels like a theme park ride rather than a story you're living and breathing, where a screen talks at you rather than to you. For players of the game, here's a question for you. You get summoned back to DedSec HQ. Your character plops onto the couch and Sabine appears on a screen and monologues at you about the latest Albion goon that you need to battle. Which story moment is this? I'll give you a sec to think it over. If you answered all of them, then you'd be right. Characters will just talk at your operative, who'll occasionally chime in with platitudes. You don't feel like you're inhabiting your character, who has agency over the story. It just feels like they're a skin suit for Sabine to ramble at. And the whole game feels like this. The dialogue on the whole just doesn't work, because the characters are all procedurally generated, meaning there could be millions of versions of these characters walking around. Ubisoft needed a way to generate different sounding voices to match each of the characters, but come on now, they couldn't hire millions of voice actors, that would be silly, so they hired a much smaller number, had them read numerous lines of vague dialogue, and then used modulators to change the pitch of their voices. Sometimes this works. Kind of.
Hard to believe, but whatever. Thanks for the tip. Albion are no angels, but this is certified to be fucked.
And other times it really, really doesn't.
I can't tell you. I can say maybe, but tell me what you need.
Fucking Clan Kelly wags. They're pagans, man.
As a result, whenever we enter into a conversation with a new recruit, the chat feels as stilted and artificial as it actually is. And also, why does 90% of the population sound like Stormzy? This leads us to the recruitment missions. The recruitment missions feel like busy work. Most recruitment missions will take you to an optional warehouse or office building where you need to break in and download some data. The example I gave earlier of Colin and driving a car into the Thames is a rarity. I recruited upwards of 30 operatives before the game was over, and every mission was lacking in intrigue or nuance outside of go here, hack the thing, or go here, get the thing. One lady wanted me to go and hack a couple of Clan Kelly thugs. An Albion soldier wanted me to go and nab an ambulance and then drive it all the way across the city to a safe house. I wasn't being chased during this drive, I was just driving for like 10 full minutes. There was no unique gameplay to each one, and whilst the locations and names might change, the recruitment missions almost always felt like Control-C and Control-V with different flavoured text plastered over it. Where are the missions like we got in Watchdogs 2 where you could play a prank on a troll from within his bedroom? Or the mission where you hack ATMs and decide if you're going to gift a character some money or empty their bank account? Where's the joviality in these missions? Because Ubisoft had to create so many variations of these, it meant that none of them were given the TLC they needed to make the characters feel interesting. You stop caring about Punk Girl's dad who was attacked by Clan Kelly, or Posh Girl's friend who died mysteriously in hospital, because it always boils down to getting close to a terminal, pushing the hack button, and downloading some data. There comes a point where you stop caring about who you're recruiting or why. The hoops you need to jump through to collect them, like the Pokemon that they are so tedious. You need to change how they feel about DedSec for a start. I feel like if someone is standing protesting Albion, they're probably sympathetic to DedSec and should be immediately available for a recruitment mission. Instead, I need to use the Deep Profiler to find out where they play darts first. Or you can rescue people from being harassed. I feel like this would lead to someone being indebted to DedSec and ready to join up immediately, but nope, instead we need to do some busy work for them first, like we're a freelancer on Fiverr. Their individual stories are dull, and the mission structure is even less interesting. Worse yet, locations begin to get repeated for these missions. I broke into this friggin' warehouse 3 times during my playthrough. 3! And each time the objective was the same: hack 2 data points. Rather than making London seem vast and flavourful, the cracks begin to widen with every recruitment mission which copies elements of the previous one, meaning you begin to see Londoners for what they are, walking blocks of code rather than people. And because you see them as code, you stop treating them like people and more like vehicles. After you've hacked the thing, most missions end with a get to safety objective popping up. But if you can't be arsed trawling through the infinitely spawning Albion agents who block your way, you can just let your character die or get hospitalized and boom, it completes the mission in half the time. At least that's if you're lucky, because if you're unlucky, the mission will completely reset if your operative dies because there aren't any checkpoints in the game. In Watch Dogs 2, if Marcus took a bullet, you get shot back a few steps to the previous checkpoint. But in Legion, my operative can drive to meet someone, speak to them, drive across the map to the next warehouse, break in, and if they get killed while you hack the thing, you get bounced right out to another operative who then needs to drive to meet a different person, speak to them, drive across the map, and you get the idea. And this is how the system runs when it actually works, because the bugs, sweet lord, the bugs. Regularly, an APC will look completely different on CTOS than they do in the game. Sometimes names will be wrong, attributes will just randomly change. This guy was once a black male anarchist which I recruited. Now he's a white 40-year-old woman and not even an anarchist anymore. This happened a lot, and considering the game came out almost 4 months ago, the census and APC systems needed to be completely patched. When your game's major selling point is broken, it's simply not ready to be released, and that's saying nothing of the crashes. And unfortunately, the APC system is what makes the hacking, combat, and traversal mechanics a labour of loathing as well. With no main character to root for or suitably imprint on, the game needs to fill this hollow feeling in the player's gut with interesting and charismatic villains. Lucky for us, Legion gives us 5 evil obelisks to topple. With our team recruited, it's time to go to war with our first baddie, Mary Kelly. Part 4. S is for Spiderbot. Legion's story presents 2 core objectives to the player: rebuild DedSec and topple Albion. But both of these objectives are in service to the more personal through line of uncovering the mysterious Zero Day who killed dear old Dalton and framed DedSec. Our first main story mission is given to us actually 6 hours in, after we've amassed enough DedSec recruits to populate a small army. We rally the troops and head over to the rubble which was once the Tone Conference Centre to see what we can learn about the night of the attack. Legion introduces a new mechanic in the form of augmented reality technology. We're able to obtain this upgrade for Bagley in a past mission, and it means that, using CTOS, he's able to do the interesting stuff for us again by piecing together important plot details. You, the player, get to do the less interesting stuff of pushing L1 on yellow holograms so Bagley can monologue at you. There is absolutely no challenge to these. Hell, even the button you push is the standard L1 hacking button that we use for everything by this point. You don't need to piece together strands of information to fully realise a sequence of events like in, say, Arkham Knight. You just stand there and push L1 when the yellow bit pops up. Talk about a missed opportunity. And speaking of missed opportunities, there are only 2 moments in the entire game where you swap between operatives during a mission. One of them is when you go to pick up the AR tech from Bagley. One operative discovers where the tech is being held, another operative picks it up and drives it to a disclosed location. A third operative then takes it from there to calibrate the tech by shooting at drones while Bagley does all the work. Oh, are you noticing a trend yet? The APC system presented a golden ticket in the form of hacktivist heists where you could choose your crew from the operatives you had previously recruited, allowing their individual abilities to blend together to form an ultimate team and then go in for high-stakes missions. But that never happens. You pick your operative, they hack the things or shoot the things, and then you go home. The end. Anyway, the team learns that the Kelly gang were the ones who planted the bombs all over London. The Metropolitan Police are under the thumb of the criminal boss Mary Kelly because they are a bunch of corrupt wanks, and Kelly herself has been using the European Processing Centre to snatch immigrants and sell them in a slave market. We're going back to Watchdogs 1's weird fascination with human trafficking again for this one. The existence of the European Processing Centre is misguided, to say the least. During the Brexit referendum, the Leave campaign notoriously paraded around with this poster in an effort to prey on deep-seated xenophobia in the UK population. Big, angry, red letters screamed "breaking point" at the general public, plastered above a vague picture of brown people in a field, condemning the EU's free movement policy, where you can holiday and relocate to any country which is in the EU. A Spanish person can come and live in Scotland, and a Scottish person can go and retire in Spain, as so many of us are privy to do because the weather here is so shit. But the cruel joke with the Brexiteer scaremongering was that this wasn't even a picture taken in the UK. It was of migrants crossing the Croatia-Slovenia border in 2015, and with the only prominent white person in the photo obscured by a box of text. Look at him, the wart. Look at him. Worse yet, the Leave campaign drolled up outright racism by constantly parading advertisements warning that Turkey was going to join the EU. Turkey! God forbid that we let fucking Turkey into the EU, lads. What are we going to do? How are we going to stop immigrants coming over? Oh yeah, maybe by using the 2006 Free Movement Directive, an EU law that allows the UK to control who comes into the country and who doesn't. People voted for Brexit to take back control of our borders, but at no point were they told the most important truth, that the UK has control of its borders. But the Leave campaign, spurred on by outright racism, played on English imperialism. So in a post-Brexit Britain, it wouldn't be a far reach to get from this to the European Processing Centre, where immigrants are bundled together to await deportation. This very concept is already grim enough to be the focus of Mary Kelly's role in London. She doesn't need to be an underground criminal mastermind, she could just be the woman who birthed the EPC and runs it. We've already seen similar procedures happening in the US under Trump's rule and in China with the Uyghur camps. Children locked in cages, separated from their relevant family members, and we've heard support for this from British politicians like worthless tosspot Nigel Farage. But Ubisoft couldn't just limit themselves to the EPC. If our responsibility was to simply take down the EPC, then they might be seen as a pro-immigration company, right? So instead, they digested this monumental symbol of post-Brexit xenophobia and added in a human slave market and body organ harvesting cabal who only focus on immigrants. See, we're not saying anything about immigration. The Mary Kelly plot is all about slave trafficking. Please don't accuse us of having an opinion. The EPC is screaming for further missions focusing on the centre itself. Instead, it's just a middleman for the criminal underworld plotline, which is just so dark and pulpy. As if trapping immigrants in a shantytown isn't dark enough. We need to track down an old DedSec member, find that his body has been experimented on, and his organs have been harvested. It's so unnecessary, and it's less Watchdogs and more Cyberpunk. But I've Brexited enough in this section, and I promise you we discuss the game's mechanics, so while we rescue badass cop Caitlin Lau, who doesn't play by the rules, let's look at combat.
Alright then, come on out. I'm not gonna cut you.
Legion has revamped its combat system. For some reason, it's more focused on sparring now rather than wailing on the square button to finish off a goon. The fighting mechanics are actually extremely similar to Assassin's Creed's old school melee combat. You wait for the enemy to go for you, dodge them, and wail into them. There are guard breaks, and enemies get slowed by perfect dodging, and while the game tutorialized all of this to me at the start, I had one question floating in my head. Why? Why is my hacking game about stealth, cameras, gadgets and gizmos taking so much time to tutorialize brawling to me? Since when was Watchdogs a fight club simulator? In an effort to add depth to the melee combat, it moved development away from the hacking designs and mission structure. Combat feels exceedingly slow. The health bars popping up above enemies' heads are the UI's way of telling you that you ought to fight them. That is one of the purposes of health bars. Because your punches feel flaky against criminals and Albion thugs, fighting takes an age, and by the time you've watered an enemy's health down to 0, it's likely you'll be swarmed by his colleagues with shotguns and machine guns to just blast at you. Hell, even if you start to think creatively and hack an enemy during combat to stun them for a one-hit takedown, your operative can take damage, meaning you could die during a cinematic takedown because you don't receive invincibility frames. During combat, you feel like you're made of glass, so what's the point? So if punching your way through Legion is a waste of time, that leaves hacking and shooting. All of the DedSec weapons are non-lethal in a conscientious effort to address the ludonarrative dissonance we had in Watch Dogs 2 of being a stealthy hacker everyman who shoot-man guns his enemies. Your operative can't pick up and use Albion weaponry, so you're limited to your taser, machine taser, shotgun taser, and grenade launcher taser. Unless you're a bloodthirsty hitman or Albion guard. They have real guns which can actually do real damage. You're going to be fighting criminals, Albion stormtroopers, or drones over the course of the game, and whilst the stun weaponry works fine against the human enemies, they're next to useless against the drones. So when you're about to enter your umpteenth mission, where you have to stand near a terminal and shoot drones for Bagley, the only effective options are to either shoot them with a machine gun, or shoot them with a machine gun. The hacking cooldowns are so long, even with operatives who have the passive ability of having a quick cooldown, that it's next to impossible to just run around and hack them all before you take a bullet to the head. Which brings me to the most important mechanic: hacking. Spiderbot does whatever an operative can't, which ends up being a lot by the time the game is over. I am not kidding when I say that at least a third of your playtime will be in the form of the Spiderbot. The Spiderbot can get into everywhere your operative can't, and your operative can't get into much. I mentioned this in passing before, but there's a side mission where you have to climb to the top of Big Ben and deactivate some Albion propaganda. Now, if this was Watch Dogs 2, there would most likely be a parkour option for us to clamber to the top, using a mix of drones and climbing to reach there physically, like we did with, say, the Golden Gate Bridge. But there is no parkour system in Legion. It's orange pipes and ladders. That's it. If you're going to emphasize that the play as anyone system is supposed to give us more options and choice, then your gameplay needs to reflect those options and those choices. I understand that my Gran isn't going to be able to clamber to the top of Big Ben, so if I'm playing as her, then sure, the Spiderbot option is sound. But what if I'm playing as a young upstart who just really loves parkour? You're telling me they're not allowed to scale London's oldest clock? But Legion is so arachnosexual that you don't get the option. No, shut up, Mog you. You want to climb to the top of Big Ben so badly? Here's some ridiculous Spiderbot platforming. There. Who wants to explore the landmarks that some of our designers spent hours achingly recreating while being sexually harassed? Just pop your floating self into a Spiderbot and wear some robot skin for 20 minutes, jumping over cogs. Isn't this what you played Watchdogs for? See, Marcus was able to lug around a plethora of gadgets at his disposal, meaning you could mess around with different combinations. A drone, a roller, a mine, a remote-activated bomb, just to name a few. If you wanted, you could attach a remote bomb to a drone, fly it next to an armed guard, and blow him to Kingdom Come from a safe distance away. But because Legion is so desperate to make every character have a gimmick, most of them can only equip one gadget at any given time. You can't bring the Spiderbot and the remote bomb to a heist. That would be giving the player too much freedom and moot the need for you to recruit specialist operatives. Now instead, you need to pick one before a mission. You can't change once you've entered a mission area and then stick to that for the entire time, killing all possible creativity and potential for improvisation. Despite the fact the CTOS has apparently undergone a major upgrade in World, being dubbed CTOS 3.0, it feels much more limited in what we can play with in Legion. This does not feel like a fluid sandbox of possibilities like 2 did. It feels like Ubisoft built London and then developed specific game functions for us to hack. We can't mess with traffic lights anymore, or blow up gas pipes in the street to cause a little anarchy just for the hell of it. We can't hack numerous cranes and line them up to uncover a secret. We can't call the police when breaking into a gang hideout and use them as cover while we sneak inside. We can't call a gang hit on a Bloom executive. All in all, DedSec London is way more underpowered than DedSec San Francisco is. Oh, but look, at least we can summon a cargo drone, so we can slowly glide over London. This is Game of the Year stuff here, mate. And that is the greatest sin with Watch Dogs Legion. For a game series all about speedily zapping yourself all over the shop, from camera to camera, drone to drone, it is so goddamn slow. The Spiderbot is slow, the cargo drone is slow, the loading screens are 50 hours long, the touted uniform system in the game feels like you've got weights attached to your feet, you're penalised for lightly jogging around a construction yard, gotta go slow in case one of your colleagues recognises you, and because it's slow, it feels boring, and in a 50+ hour game, you need to keep giving me options to find the fun, or else I'm going to play something else. Watch Dogs Legion doesn't let me find the fun. It doesn't give you options, because the hacking is so limited. And speaking of the uniform system, did anybody actually think about this? You get recognised if somebody walks up and gets too close to you. Why? This isn't a disguise I'm wearing, it's not like Hitman. This is a uniform because my character is a builder. These are my colleagues. My character is meant to be here. It'd be more suspicious if he wasn't at his job. Stop shooting! I work here! Anyway, with Caitlin Lau's guidance, we make it to Mary Kelly's house, and because the game doesn't offer anything in the way of variety as to how we infiltrate story-based locations, we have to hack a drone, fly it through the window, and scout out the house from within. And we see Bloody Mary in all her glory.
You made me a slave. All of us. Please, let me go. Take this thing out.
Back to your old life.
Back to nothing. Back to you 2.5 screaming blighters in your dead-end job and sucking off the dole. You don't want that, love.
And then that's it. After we see Kelly berate her European slaves, promising to cut them up and harvest their organs, she gets summoned off to her black market slave auction, and her mission chain just pauses until we finish off some of her tyrannous pals. Well, okay then. Luckily for us, waiting for Kelly to become relevant again leaves the door open to jump into the best mission chain in the game, and also the mission which feels like it doesn't belong here. Part 5. C is for Cyberpunk. I am willing to bet a hot steak dinner that someone at Ubisoft really wished they were working on Cyberpunk 2077. Although, with a choice between sexual harassment and illness-inducing crunch, I'm not sure which company fares better in that comparison. But allow me to give the game credit where it's due for 5 minutes, because I'd feel a little bit guilty if I didn't, even if it's covered in butts. The Skye Larson mission chain is interesting, it's visually gorgeous, and it introduces the most charismatic character in Legion. It's also covered in the game's greatest sin though, and completely misses an opportunity to deal with the B word.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to move this twat before he gets his strength back. Laters!
Nout is a conspiracy theorist, a dark web hacker, and honestly a little bit unstable, which makes her more interesting than literally anybody we've met up until now. She's uncovered a dark conspiracy involving AI and Skye Larson's plan to upload her consciousness into the cloud. I mentioned it previously, but breaking into the GBB is also extremely on rails. We climb to the top of the roof and hack into the CTOS hub like in every single other mission, which gives me an opportunity to talk about the GBB. In the UK, we have the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. It's a public service broadcaster which differentiates itself from the likes of Sky News and Fox News and CNN by the fact that it has a particular standard that it claims to uphold. It's completely neutral in the matters of debate by law. The question of, is the BBC actually biased, is one which gets thrown around a lot by both camps. The right, notably Brexiteers, believe that the BBC is too woke because of an emphasis on promoting diversity and progressivism in recent years, and because of that one-time award-winning journalist Emily Matlis called out Brexit bellend Dominic Cummings for being a rodent and breaking lockdown rules and then lying that he went on a drive to a nearby town to test his eyesight. The left believes that the BBC is biased towards conservatism, that it is seedier than it lets on in how it presents cultural and political issues. One of its flagship presenters, Andrew Neil, is an editor for the right-wing newspaper The Spectator. He's also a Tory donor, has regularly attacked the EU on his show, and has his balls in a leash carried by the billionaire Barclay brothers. Or, if you're looking for a more cultural example, there's that time the BBC awarded J.K. Rowling with the Russell Prize because her hate speech on trans women, where she falsely equated it with her own personal experiences, led to them feeling that, quote, the deluge of hatred that she faced before writing this blog made it brave. Sorry. Pity the billionaires, for they shall be eaten first. But the point I'm making is that the BBC is not biased towards one particular political philosophy. It's just lost sight of what impartial or neutral means. During the Brexit referendum, the BBC consistently pitted two sides of the argument against each other. On the Remain side, we would have the likes of Andrew Bailey, leading economist and governor for the Bank of England, making sensible fiscal arguments to remain in the European Union. And for the sake of fairness and impartiality, the BBC would need to find someone who would disagree with his arguments, presenting both sides. Like, say, Anne Widdecombe, a racist gnome that just won't die, who compared being in the EU to slavery and wrote a trilogy about a French girl Johnsoning a Nazi.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors.
This is impartiality, but it's not reasonable impartiality. It's not presenting both sides of an argument, it's one side giving some data-based predictions on what Brexit will do to jobs and livelihoods, trying to argue with a geriatric troll whose greatest claim to fame is Celebrity Big Brother. And in this desperate battle to remain impartial, but cocking it up so thoroughly, the BBC has begun to seem like it's leaning on one extreme side over the other, when in reality it's just really bad at what it's trying to do, leaving it exposed to far-right pundits to manipulate in conning the people and trumpeting their lies. I mean, look at this short comedy sketch which aired during the Brexit debate.
It's over.
Oh, God. What? Are you absolutely mental or something? Have you actually considered what leaving would mean?
You're so patronising.
Patronising? What?
Do you get it? The EU's like a clingy, nagging boyfriend, and Britain's like a really sensible, not at all brainwashed girlfriend. Comedy is dead. So, getting back to Legion, the GBB is a direct parallel to what the BBC could evolve into under a fascist regime. Presenting it initially as a mouthpiece for the government is a perfect opportunity to look at how mainstream media tries to combat the digital age, and how it can be warped from an institution that, in principle, is a really great thing into pure dribbling propaganda. This is an entire mission chain in itself. You could get really deep into the fake news of it all. How is it developed? How do you sell lies in a convincing way that people actually eat up? Legion barely nods its head at the GBB. It's just kind of there. At no point in the story do we stick it to the GBB, because again, Legion leaves no room for nuance. It's all just the man. After we see Skye Larson discuss her cloud brain technology, Nout sends us on a mission to the Technocrat's house, teasing that there are dark secrets waiting for us there. And this is the section I mean when I discuss how it's the most affecting plot thread in the game, as well as how it jumps the gun to full cyberpunk. Skye has built a full surreal cottage beneath her home, with a hyper-intelligent AI running the show. The setup feels less like it was pulled from a Brexit simulator, and more like it was crafted by the demented environment designers of a Resident Evil lab. We pick up audio logs and pictures which provide an insight into Skye Larson's private life and personal history. We see how she experimented on her dead dog and uploaded its consciousness to a Spiderbot, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit chilling to hear it whimper and scurry about its tiny cage, and then be given the option to put it out of its misery. We've become so close to our own Spiderbot, due to how the level design forces you to use it, that seeing it die is a complicated feeling. We witness the deterioration of Skye's mother and how she begged her daughter not to turn her consciousness into an AI. Skye's whole outlook is really twisted. Mary Kelly is an insane criminal, and Nigel Cass is a ruthless dictator, but something about Skye really screams malice. It might be the little smirk she has when ordering her mother to play the music she likes. Perhaps that's just me, but the mission ends with us putting the digital copy of her mother out of her misery, and we see numerous pods from Skye's failed experiments, people that she took off the street and tried to transform. Now, in both of my Spider-Man videos, I criticised the heavy reliance Insomniac have on villain rooms to give us all of our backstory, but Skye's mission is more complex than that. This is a villain house, in the basement of her flat, and we are given the opportunity to make a choice regarding the spider dog, so it feels more enthralling than you may first expect. But it's also a complete rip-off of Cyberpunk's main storyline, and I'm not saying that Ubisoft purposefully copied CG Projekt Red, but it's certainly reflective that the most interesting mission in Legion boils down to walking about, picking up items, and seeing a different interpretation of the upload your psyche to the cloud question that Cyberpunk explored with Johnny Silverhand, rather than, dealing with the politics of a post-Brexit Britain, or, I don't know, hacking things.
Were you clued up on that crazy So now you see what's at stake. Daybreak is about to launch, and if it does, thousands more people are going to meet the same fate, and they won't all die. Skye will be free to torture them forever.
We even get to meet Nout in person after this, the character that we should have been playing as for the entire game. It's the ultimate level of irony that Legion creates such a fascinating character in Nout, boasts in its promos that you can play as anyone, and then doesn't let you play as the one character you actually want to play as. Just imagine it, a hacktivist freelancer, rightfully paranoid about both DedSec and Albion. She distrusts Sabine and DedSec as a whole, and has spent her time underground, clawing to the heart of Albion's dodgy dealings to find the really messed up stuff. Having her paranoia proven right at the end of the game's story would make it a really emotional climax. But nah, you're not playing as Nout, you're playing as knob jockey number 57 with a bad back. Just because the aesthetic and the story beats of Sky's mission chain are affecting doesn't mean that the moment-to-moment gameplay is, and this gives us a solid opportunity to discuss Legion's limited level and mission design. Because it is limited, make no mistake, and it takes 10 steps back from the freedom of Watchdogs 2. One of the reasons is because of the line puzzles. There are at least double the amount of line puzzles in Legion than there was in its predecessor, and the only reason that there are so many of these is because Ubisoft were so busy developing their janky play-as-anyone system that they didn't pay attention to the most fundamental ways that a game lets a player find the fun. To get into Sky's lab, you need to do a line puzzle. To shut down a murderous medical AI, you need to do a line puzzle. To break into a nightclub, you need to do a line puzzle. To deactivate Hamish Balaji's traps, you need to do a mother foraging line puzzle, and those are just 4 of the less egregious moments when they appear. There are 2 which are absolutely horrific and lazy in their inclusion, and in keeping with how forced the gameplay actually is, often the line puzzles are convoluted and blend into the level design, meaning you can't just access them from cameras like you did in previous games. You are forced to hack a drone and fly around. Oh, but there are also hyper-aware drones and enemies patrolling near the line puzzle, which are immediately suspicious of a CTOS drone buzzing about doing, you know, its job because the disguise system is broken. So actually what you need to do is break into the puzzle room, kill all of the enemies and drones, and then sit and connect the dots. I would rather do every single Spider-Man Signs puzzle in a oneer than do another goddamn line puzzle. Following our destruction of Sky's lab, the player learns that she's retired to Bloom and is looking to download herself into the cloud, achieving a type of digital immortality. The team rush to Bloom to break in, and we take her down, you guessed it, through the power of line puzzles. It feels like these moments were initially intended to be a placeholder objective, and then as Ubisoft began to approach the release date, they panicked and decided just to keep them all in rather than create a unique or interesting means of taking down our big bads. I've already mentioned how the level design at the start of the game funnels you through third-person shooter corridors, but the mission and level design is so stale and so forced during almost every single mission. So let's look at breaking into Bloom itself. There's only one way into Bloom, through the front door. This is gated off by an electronic key, which is somewhere inside. We can't fly a cargo drone onto the roof because there's no roof access. We can't sneak in through the back door because there's only one entrance. This forces our operative to waste their single gadget slot in equipping the Spiderbot so it can break into this conveniently placed vent. Entering the server room, all of the doors in here are locked too, so we need to jump into the cameras in order to hack the key from an armed guard. Now the cameras are too far away from the armed guard, so rather than just using the cameras to get the key, we need to hack a drone so it's close enough, because one of the most irritating, scratchy issues with Watchdogs' mission design is that every single level requires you to hack a bloody electronic key, and in order to download your key, you need to be sitting on top of it rather than hack it from a distance. Now, the CTOS hub that we need to hack, again, every mission boils down to hack the hub, is inaccessible to a human operative. So, once we get the key, we then need to send our drone on a jaunty jog through the Bloom servers, because if it's not the Spiderbot which is dominating your playtime, it's the drones, forcing us to lose control of our character, which we've spent so long trying to recruit, and instead jump into a little toy so that the environments could be transformed into blocky neon textures and dark blues. Having gotten what we need from our drone, we can finally enter Bloom and work through the security to reach Sky. But oops, there are hardly any traps or opportunities to stealthily take down our enemies without getting our hands directly dirty. So we need to pull out the stun gun and play the game like a third-person shooter because there's hardly anywhere to hide. After taking out all of the guards in the near vicinity, we head to a nearby elevator, but, progressing through the level is locked behind a loading screen, another fun, common feature of the mission designs, and if you remember, you'll be dead before a loading screen completes its function. Not only is the rest of the mission gated behind the loading screen, you can't interact with the elevator because the game still thinks you're being hunted by enemies, even though, in this playthrough, I have murdered them all. So we need to just sit and wait for the empty Bloom office to revert back to its natural state. This takes so long that some of the corpses will have started decomposing before the bloody elevator can load. All of the missions and all of the levels are designed this way. Areas are gated off until you've infiltrated a compound using the Spiderbot. The few exceptions to this rule are often just gang warehouses, which you don't need to break into unless it's for a recruitment mission, and even then, the options aren't much to write home about aside from Spiderbot or Cargobot. Ooh. All of this is a victim of the APC system. The level design feels purposefully made this way to justify the specialist operatives you can recruit, and because you're so weak and your opportunities are so limited when it comes to hacking, the levels fall into the same boring state every single time. Spiderbot, hack the key, unlock the gate, sneak in, shoot the thugs, plug into a server. After wading through another dismal line puzzle, you get to Skye Larson, and damn, Ubisoft really wanted to make that Cyberpunk game, didn't they? Just look at this imagery, with her plugged into numerous wires and cables, the shiny neon reflecting off of her androgynous form. We even get a narrative choice here: kill Skye, or let her achieve immortality. And I'm sorry, what? First of all, why is this a choice? There are absolutely no consequences to killing Skye or keeping her alive. If you let her live, Nout gets peeved at you for 5 minutes and then immediately calls you back saying that she's cool to work together. If you kill her, Nout rejoices at all the murdering that we're doing together. Nothing changes either way. Second, at no point over the course of the game will you ever be presented with a choice again. Ever. Was this mission developed in a vacuum? It leans so heavily into science fiction to the point where it literally starts to rip off imagery and plot threads from another game that came out this year, and despite what it promises with the weird futurism of it all and a story-based choice, none of these are capitalized on later. Just like with the omission of a proper GBB plotline, the entire game looks like one massive missed opportunity when compared to the bones of Skye Larson's mission chain. And as you'll expect, that is not the only butchered opportunity. Part 6. L is for London. Outside of the main story, Legion has 3 quest givers who act as your side mission authority figures. Nout sends you on more cyberpunky AI quests, where you break into a building and blow up a server. Caitlin Lau sends you on a few gang skirmishes to clean up after Clan Kelly, and Hamish Balaji only has one quest chain for you, concentrating on rescuing a journalist from yet another Albion warehouse. We need to track down Hamish because he's an ex-Albion employee and he's likely to know the movements of our next target, Albion CEO Nigel Cass. Turns out he's hosting a roundtable meeting in the Tower of London, so that's our next mission. Infiltrate the White Tower and find out what Cass is up to. And speaking of the Tower of London, let's have a chat about how London is presented to the player, because it's simultaneously gorgeous and boring. The environmental artists at Ubisoft are renowned by this point for their attention to detail in designing real-life and historic locations. Due to their breathtaking work on Notre Dame in Assassin's Creed Unity, they've been able to assist with the restoration work going into the cathedral following the horrific fire of 2019. Yeah, you forgot that happened, didn't you? Feels like a lifetime ago. The same can be said for how painstaking London is in their recreation of Camden, Lambeth, Westminster, and I'd be lying if I said it's not invigorating to run around London, a city I've spent numerous weekends in for my work, purely due to the breathtaking focus on historic landmarks. Walking around the grounds of the House of Commons, you could imagine a news presenter is going to pop up at any moment, reporting on the chamber debates. Standing on the bridge and drinking in the sound of the city is seriously impressive, and as with all Ubisoft games, the aesthetic of the environments needs to be applauded. But recreating London and slapping a digital coat of paint is only half the battle. The world needs to feel open and interesting to explore. So, is it? My answer, if I'm able to give you an answer, is a resigned In comparison to Watchdogs 2, the game world stumbles and falls miles from the finish line. London's sexy enough to run around in, and the APCs with their randomised personal data is a novel concept at first, but after hour 20, once you've seen through the facade, you begin to stop caring about running around and enjoying London in the same way you enjoyed San Francisco, because the gameplay is so repetitive and the city is depressing without being interesting. Protests litter the streets. You can't turn a corner without seeing people without homes, abandoned buildings, Albion checkpoints, drones, and fascist harassment of the residents. The cars are generally depopulated because what's the point of generating an APC for the player to recruit if they're just going to be hidden inside of a car? Oh sure, the story-based reason is that cars are generally all automated now so you don't need a driver, but those cars still need passengers. Famous landmarks like St. Paul's Cathedral or Buckingham Palace are inaccessible. You can admire them from the outside, but what a gross missed opportunity. You just need to type Queen Watchdogs into YouTube to find hundreds of videos from creators complaining about the fact they can't sneak into Buckingham Palace. Again, parts of the game feel unfinished. There's just one nightclub in London for you to sneak into, Walkie Talkie, and I hope you like it because you're going to be going there no less than 3 times in the entire game, despite it not having any deep significance to the characters or villains. Watchdogs regurgitates locations to infiltrate a fair few times, because it only has a handful of tricks up its sleeve, again because the developers spent all of their time coding spreadsheets for the bloody census system. You will wander into Bloom headquarters, and the Tower of London, and the Metropolitan Police's headquarters, and the Nexus Tower twice during the story alone, never mind the recruitment missions or side quests, and none of these locations are ever as interesting or creative as sneaking into Noodle or a space station. It doesn't matter if you're in Bloom, the White Tower, or Mary Kelly's slave market, the aesthetic is always the same. Navies, neon reds, and browns, dealing with heavily armed militia in these dross and disgusting environments. I don't know if maybe the interior environmental designer got sacked during production, or more likely, Legion's engine is so cluttered with APC code that it can't load the insides of locations. For reasons absolutely beyond me, you can't go inside shops anymore. Coffee shops, clothes shops, all of it has been scrapped in favour of standing outside of a window and buying from a tablet. What am I going to do? Just strip in the street? I feel like our fascist overlords are going to have a problem with this. It completely spoils any chance for immersion, and it's just another in a long line of ways in which Legion feels stripped of features in comparison to its predecessor. We no longer get to scroll through apps in our phone like Marcus could, playing music on the go, getting pumped for a mission, or buying stuff online while we jog around. That clever means of integrating the UI into the game world has been scrapped in favour of the optic, which, as far as gameplay is concerned, is simply less interesting because all it does is remove the need for a phone. It doesn't add anything, it takes away. Oh, and while we're here, let's talk about how useless the game's economy is, shall we? How can you look at Watch Dogs 2's fair economy, where you can spend money on clothes, gadgets, cars, and weapons, and reduce all of that to clothes? You can't even buy masks, because Ubisoft needed to give the player an incentive to return to old, stagnant locations by littering these in warehouses or gang spots, so masks are hidden away in locked rooms, generally only accessed by the Spiderbot. Rather than your team gaining experience to level up in a skill tree, you have tech points, green symbols which litter the map that you need to go out of your way to collect, or alternatively, you can earn them by completing missions in the main story. Tech points let you buy new gadgets like Bomb or Knuckle Duster, neither of which you'll ever use because you can only equip one gadget at a time and every mission requires the Spiderbot. You can also use these tech points to upgrade your hacking abilities, but the increases are so small and incremental that even by the end of the game with a good chunk of tech points collected, your team isn't going to feel any more powerful than they did at the start of the game. Again, Marcus started Watch Dogs 2 with the ability to hack almost anything, meaning you could be creative at the start. And I'm sorry, unlocking the ability to hack a security turret is never going to be as fun or entertaining as calling the cops to orchestrate a full-blown gang war. Where did all of the creativity and fun go from the days of Watch Dogs 2? I'm drinking a glass of water to calm myself down. The reason why this is so infuriating rather than just annoying is because the tech point economy discourages creativity or non-lethality or even just doing any of the side content, because you never have a reason to do any of this stuff. If the environments are linear and uninteresting, and the individual stories are convoluted gobbledygook, and you don't gain anything except for money from just playing the game, why would you bother engaging with any of the game's content? I've got more to say on London, but let's quickly jump back to the story.
Without your support, I couldn't stand here and tell you, I promise you, that with the launch of Project Themis, London will be the first city in the world to be made truly safe.
So Nigel Cass, the head of Albion and our de facto leader, intends to launch Project Themis, autonomous drones which can predict and prevent crimes before they happen. Which means not only is Legion ripping off Cyberpunk 2077 in the Sky Larson story, it's now slicing the plot out of Minority Report and pasting it into Nigel Cass's story. The police commissioner doesn't like this, and the second he decides to bring in a politician to the conversation, Cass stands up and in full view of everyone, shoots the commissioner in the head. This tells us the most important thing we need to know about Cass. He's untouchable. This isn't directly related to Brexit or UK politics, but in 2016, Donald Trump gloated to his followers that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and people wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Nigel Cass proves that in Legion's world, this is true. The second impeachment hearing proves that in the real world, this is true as well. What follows is a lengthy couple of hours where the team travel from warehouse to warehouse in an effort to create a micro-drone which will carry them into Themis' service so we can snuff out Cass's plans. Because that's exactly what we needed, another drone. So while they do that, let's get back to the city. London is divided up into boroughs for us to liberate or inspire to rise up against Albion. I suppose the reasoning behind the existence of these side quests are buried in platitudes. You need to do 3 chores, rescuing someone, assassinating someone, painting on a billboard, etc., to unlock the golden 4th chore, which is a unique activity for us to undertake. Liberating a borough makes it easier to recruit APCs. We're rewarded with specialist operatives like a spy or an anarchist. The side missions can vary from playing as a drone, playing as a Spiderbot, playing as a drone again, following a scripted sequence in a plane where we press L1 a couple of times, or, oh hey, actually, an interesting one, the only race in the game. You heard me right. There are 3 side activities in Legion: drinking, which isn't an activity, darts, or kicking a football, which is boring. There's literally a holographic giant chess set sitting in Camden waiting to be interacted with, but nope, you can't. The go-karting of Watch Dogs 2, gone. Races, gone, except for this one specific moment. Again, the world feels like it's stripped of content in comparison to its predecessors. Driving around, you'll often get exposed to the podcasts which play over Legion's radio, and this is yet another example of where the lack of phone and apps detracts from the experience. The world building is developed almost exclusively by listening to The Bug or Buccaneer. The Bug clearly takes its inspiration from the cast created by Ian Dunton & Co., initially titled Remaniacs to cover Brexit, and then spun off to being called Oh God, What Now? To cover the fallout of a Boris Johnson government. But listening to the podcasts and audio files always cancels when you pick up an item, meaning you need to then jump into your menu and select it from a long, muddled mess of episodes which, to top it all off, you can't listen to while walking around. And to top that off, like chafing a cucumber, the same 5 episodes of The Bug always start over from the beginning whenever you enter and exit a car, meaning you get locked into some hellish Groundhog Day. The Bug's witticisms start to come off as grating, and it breaks makes the immersion that these are radio stations following a cycle and more like the wider world pauses and waits for you to interact with it. Buccaneer Radio is more focused on being a phone-in show where Claire Waters speaks to the general public and gauges their perception on Albion and DedSec's efforts, but these are much rarer than the other podcasts. In a fascist London where fake news is on the rise, perpetuated by those in power, where are the Julia Hartley Brewers? Where are the Piers Morgans ranting about cancel culture? Legion's podcasts feel like they're exclusively left-wing, and as somebody who identifies with the left, that's not what I want to experience in my Brexit simulator. I want Legion to understand how divided a post-Brexit Britain is, and represent that. The voices of those who voted for Brexit, and believe in Brexit, are only ever represented in the form of jackboot stormtroopers. When you inevitably get sick of driving from one end of the map to the other, you'll use the fast travel points in the form of the subway stations, which brings me to how segmented London feels. Loading screens are everywhere during infiltrations, as I've already highlighted, but during general exploration, they pop up when you least expect them. The mask collectibles are one of the more interesting options you can play around with. You can use them to make your team feel more uniform as an organisation, whilst keeping their individual looks. But if you want to change your mask, you have to go back to the DedSec HQ. This means that you need to fast travel to the headquarters, which is a long-ass loading screen, change your mask, and then in order to leave the headquarters, you need to sit through another long-ass loading screen. That's 2 loading screens just to change your clothes. And as a result, the player stops caring about how their character looks. Now, I know what you're thinking. The engine is buckling under the weight of the dynamic APC system and rendering all of that census data and the beautifully crafted House of Commons. And yes, it probably is, but if the cost of the stilted APC system, which spoils any emotional weight for the story and grinds away with repetitive recruitment missions, is that Legion needs to consistently segment its world behind 30-second loading screens at a rate of 1 every 5 minutes, then that's not a system worth introducing to a current generation game. I'm sorry. Alright, so after all of that, the game is finally feeling kind enough to give us a resolution to the Mary Kelly plot. We've attended her slave market and learned that she was in cahoots with Zero Day. All that's left to do now is go to her house and confront her.
DedSec is it? At least your timing's good.
The Met's coming to take you in.
Oh, I am counting on it, love.
Off the back of the Sky Larson mission, you would expect this moment where the slaves rise up against Kelly with Lau and your operative looking on to lead to a choice. This whole moment is just screaming narrative choice, right? Our cop friend, Caitlin Lau, is conflicted on whether or not we should kill Kelly. We've seen the grotesque experiments she's enacted on the immigrants she has captured. She's likely going to break out of prison if we apprehend her. But if we kill her, is that true justice? Or does that make us as corrupt as Albion? What a perfect opportunity to let the player ascribe a moral philosophy to the type of DedSec we're creating with our operatives. Let's make our choice. Oh, okay. So we don't get any influence over this, and Lau compromises her values and just lets the slaves murder Kelly. We had the perfect opportunity to, at least for a moment, confront police corruption and the militarization of justice in the UK, but we just stand there while the game murders her. And we're supposed to feel guilty about that? I don't feel guilty about that. I have no agency in this story, despite it teasing us with some decision-making earlier. Great. Part 7. B is for Brexit. The next few hours of the game are such a sloppy puddle of plot that I'm going to briefly sum it up here so we can get to the really interesting stuff and look at the game's politics directly. So, we're contacted by a mysterious whistleblower who works for SIRS, a private security company which has taken over the Secret Service. The whistleblower, Richard Malik, has been kidnapped by Albion and needs our help to rescue him. Malik is, speaking plainly, a knob, and he also joins the rest of Legion's villains in how he looks like a real-life right-wing politician. In this case, he looks like Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, the guy who blew £849 million on the government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme, where the Brexit government subsidised restaurant meals to encourage people to go out to have a munch. In the middle of a life-threatening pandemic, Malik sends us to the SIRS headquarters because he believes Zero Day is made up of grumpy spies. We steal a dossier, but it's already been hacked by Zero Day, so we need to find the Home Office/SIRS liaison and seduce them to access SIRS, I think. She's gay, so my male operative gets knocked back, and we need to sit through a loading screen to change to a female operative. This would have been cute if my male spy wasn't gay himself, according to the census data, so it just proved to be another example of how the APC system wasn't as clever as Ubisoft thought it was. After the honeypot, Malik believes that Zero Day is Emma Child, the director of SIRS, so we hop over to a meeting point and eavesdrop on a conversation she's having with 3 of her best spies, who, according to the subtitles, include her nutritionist and a file clerk.
Give me strength!
Everybody seems to be pretty certain that Emma Child is Zero Day, which would be convincing if the main menu didn't give her a separate villain picture to Zero Day, destroying all possible suspension of disbelief. Nice one. Child gets mad that we're spying on her, so kidnaps one of our teammates. We go to rescue our operative, but it was a trap all along, and Child convinces us she can be trusted by sending us a recorded conversation between Malik and Nigel Cass, where Malik openly states for all the world to hear that he is a faithful, loyal member of the Tory party, and he intends to lure us out of hiding and manipulate us into killing Emma Child because he wants her job. So actually, Malik is a baddie, not her, and we come to a deal. She'll release our operative if we help her assassinate Malik, and DedSec seems pretty goving keen to just kill people in this game. Remember how the best game in this trilogy is all about hacktivism? So, with a story which is unravelling faster than my mental health, our only solace is in examining in a more direct way how sincere Legion's representation of a post-Brexit Britain actually is. Legion's lack of nuance is its downfall, its inability to commit, to actually say something of substance aside from stick it to the man. And there are a few key areas which absolutely need to be on the whiteboard of topics to tackle in a dystopian portrayal of a post-Brexit Britain. Fake news, the BBC, immigration, the wealth gap, nationalism, the monarchy, and the NHS. We've already examined how Legion misses the turd on a silver platter opportunities to examine the BBC and immigration control, misstepping into futurism and Sin Bloody City, so we're not going to waste any more time with that. But let's break down the other 5. Let's start with the Queen. Brexiteers live in the past, putting the great back into Great Britain and so on, and a lot of their identity is based entirely around a fairy tale notion of what the UK once was, and whitewashing our history. But simply, they don't like change. The monarchy is supposed to not have any political stance. It doesn't matter if it's Labour, Tory, or Nigel Farage's band of monkeys. If they win the democratic vote, they are Her Majesty's government, whether the Queen likes it or not. So, of course, there were 2 weeks' worth of discussions about the Queen's blue and yellow hat when she gave a statement in Parliament, with both sides arguing over whether or not it was a subliminal message of support to the European Union. Far-right newspapers, like The Sun, try to argue that the Queen was clearly in favour of Brexit, because Brexiteers had to believe that the Queen that they love so much agreed with their political alignment. The Leave campaign bandied about claims that they wouldn't need a trade deal with the EU after leaving because we have a closer relationship with Commonwealth countries from our days as an empire, and they'll want to do trade with us. They claimed that countries like Fiji and Belize, who have a combined GDP of 7 billion, would be able to fill the hole left by the disappearance of the EU's 19 trillion in the event of a no-deal or a bad deal Brexit. The monarchy is integral to an examination of how Britain will react to Brexit in the years to come. So how are they handled in Legion? Well, they're not in it, and I don't mean that I was expecting a digitally rendered Prince Andrew noncing about the place, but the monarchy has been explicitly removed from London, and nobody knows where they are, or if they're even alive. There's no mission exploring this any further, and that's bad enough, but the entire framing of the lack of monarchy in Legion is misguided. You find protest signs outside the gates of Buckingham Palace. Albion banners coat the walls, showing that they've clearly occupied the insides, inferring that it was Nigel Cass and Albion who, don't forget, engender the xenophobia and isolationism at the heart of the Brexit argument, who abolished the monarchy when they took control. And the likes of DedSec think that's a bad thing, as we can see from the protest signs in DedSec HQ. Think about that. The far-right nationalist enterprise abolished the monarchy, and the anarchists think this is a bad thing. All you need to do is look at the hateful backlash from the far-right and notable Brexiteers towards Meghan Markle and Harry Windsor to see how furious the right would be if a private company popped along and abolished the monarchy one day. Just look at how raging they are at the two royals who want to leave the family. Kate's morning sickness cure, Prince William gifted with an avocado for pregnant Duchess. Meghan Markle's beloved avocado linked to human rights abuse and drought, millennial shame. Both the inclusion and exclusion of the royal family in Legion shows a lack of depth to the game's assessment of the political landscape that it's trying to build from. Albion wouldn't get rid of the Queen. They'd do everything in their power to keep her as a symbol of keep calm and carry on under their jackbooted rule. Let's have a look at fake news. Legion's London is painted with numerous three-word slogans like we still see in the UK today. Take back control, hands, face, space, etc. But it doesn't engage with fake news and propaganda in a meaningful way. The greatest irony of fake news is that across the Western world it's become a tool of the far right. There's a history of spreading lies and misinformation there, and then when somebody points out that these lies are in fact lies, they claim that truth is fake news. This was one of the ways that the Leave campaign managed to convince the people that immigration was going to sink the country, that Turkey joining the EU would tank our economy, that the European Union wanted to unbend our bananas, which we don't grow. Now, a lot of the deep-seated bigotry which has been festering in the UK for years has been planted there by your right-wing newspapers like The Sun or the Daily Mail, pictured here branding judges as national traitors and enemies of the people for following parliamentary procedure. Enter Facebook, and specifically Cambridge Analytica. See, in the UK, there's a legal limit to the amount of money a political campaign can spend on its advertising, and they have to declare all of it. This dates back to the 19th century, where politicians would literally walk about with wheelbarrows of money and buy votes from people. Because of the way digital advertising works, Facebook in particular is a black box. It's very difficult to track the amount of money spent on an advertising campaign, and it's very easy to move that money around. So, Vote Leave created lots of mini campaigns, laundered their money through them, and as a result, the audience they were targeting, undecided voters, would get a barrage of fake adverts every time they logged on, which the Remain campaign couldn't compete with. And none of this was regulated, because Facebook, just like Ubisoft, claims it's apolitical, so doesn't shut down fake news. And if you want a true example of what I mean, let's look at one of the most manipulative advertisements they posted.
Then I'll raise you £50 million.
£50 million, Gary? That's as much as you give the EU every day.
Well, it's your chance to win it, Kev. You can finally buy that Picasso.
My favourite artist, Gary. And your chance too. It's free to enter. Just fill in the form at 50million.uk. And if you correctly predict all of the outcomes from the European Football Championship this summer, you will win £50 million.
Hello, Ubisoft? I don't know, pal, but if you're looking for obvious quest IDs which don't involve running into a warehouse, I know where you could start looking. This ad encouraged online gambling without declaring it such. That's against the law. It suckered somebody into agreeing with Brexit and passing over their details to be inundated with further fake news. That's against the law. The £50 million offer, if paid out, would be illegal for a political campaign to spend. Lucky for them that they didn't pay it out then, eh? Fake news is referenced twice in Legion. That's it. None of the game's missions deal with the subject matter directly. It's just background noise, and even then, it isn't particularly engaging background noise. Albion's overthrowing of the government is described as fake news spread by foreign invaders, Russia or China, take your pick. And then that's the end of it. Watchdogs has already created a version of Facebook in its universe. Invite. Why aren't you capitalizing on your own lore to explore these very serious real-life issues? A quest where you need to shut down Albion's propaganda machine by intercepting some of their fake news on Invite would at least be interesting and different from another Spiderbot challenge. Ah, but Ubisoft's apolitical, apparently. Silicon Valley is fair game, but governments? Not a chance, mate. For those keeping score, the UK's systematic and tragic levels of poverty have been condemned by the United Nations. The wealth gap is greater in the UK than in any of our European contemporaries, primarily due to Tory austerity cuts, and because of Brexit, this gap is only predicted to widen. One thing which Legion ingrains into its world building is the widening wealth gap in the UK. Under Albion's control, numerous people are out of work and have flooded into the streets. Artificial intelligence has ousted cabbies from their jobs, and there's an entire quest based around a rogue taxi driver AI who has become self-aware and is furious because it thinks that automation has made him lose his job. It's actually really hard-hitting to unplug it from the system while it parrots typical phrases you hear from black cab drivers on talk radio. Legion directly points the finger at automation as at fault for the disruption of jobs in London. Protest signs are everywhere, condemning the machines, and again, it's another example of how Legion turns its attention to the wrong areas. By slapping futurism on top of Brexit, the subject matter changes. It's not cronyism, or tax evasion, or the redistribution of wealth which needs to be tackled, it's foraging Skynet. And let's talk about the protests. A good chunk of the London population is homeless in Legion. Shantytowns and tents are set up in broad daylight. None of this is hidden away. It's in full view for the citizens to see. Food banks have been set up, but they never directly interact with the story or any of the missions. Jogging around London, you may even find yourself slightly confused about what the protests are even trying to do. They're all childish representations of what DedSec and the protesters would and have stood for in the past. Nowhere to sleep, stay woke, one of them says. Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Yes, homeless person who has been rogered out of a job, are you sleeping on the streets? Can't afford a bite to eat? Well, don't worry, we are protesting on your behalf. Stay woke, buddy, that'll solve your issues. Are you kidding me with this? What about this one? Rents, not tents. I thought these people were battling against injustice, like the sort of injustice we've seen over the past 2 years, where landlords who have invested in private property are driving market value up, so that people can't afford to get onto the property ladder. Newsflash, Ubisoft, people don't want to pay rent, they want to buy homes. It's one of the greatest sources of inequality right now because your savings are going into ridiculous rent costs. I don't think a protester would be begging the government to let them pay rent, for God's sake. They want to buy a house! The prevalence of these ridiculous DedSec statues really paints DedSec in the immature light as well. The modern art mannequins with 2 fingers up flipping off the man are everywhere. Not only do these statues say nothing except, I'm angry, but for some reason Albion haven't torn them down. Why? Make your mind up if London is a fascist state or not. Your operatives will recruit people by telling them to take the black pill, join DedSec, like they're a cabal of incels obsessed with the Matrix. This sort of language purposefully depoliticizes a game which has claimed from the beginning that it's all about UK Western politics, and you'll often find yourself scratching your head as to what DedSec stands for exactly, aside from stuff Albion, stick it to the man. What are they fighting for?
You want in? Go on. Take the red pill. Join DedSec.
Shove it up your Johnson. Which brings me to Stormzy. Oh Stormzy, what did they do to you? Despite Ubisoft's claims that Watchdogs is dealing with the issues that led to Brexit, but the game isn't political, they decided to bring in the UK's most vocal artist against Brexit, the Tories, austerity and cronyism. Stormzy. The guy who released Vossi Bop, for God's sake, with lyrics that read, "Fuck the government" and "Fuck Boris." The guy who's famous for getting Glastonbury to chant those very lyrics on repeat at the top of their lungs. The guy who's donated $10 million to minorities in need, who can barely afford their rents. The guy who constantly discusses race and the importance of spreading wealth around. Well, this political mouthpiece has got a mission in Watchdogs Legion, apparently a purposefully apolitical game, and what do you do in this mission? Well, he's got a new track, and Big Meanie's Albion won't let him release it, so you've got to help Stormzy get the tunes out. I'm not kidding. You've got to help Stormzy at Wealthy Celebrity release his new song and make that dollar. He's not a playable character, which means that, no, you can't play as anyone. Let's add him to the list. So far we've got Nout, Hamish Balaji, Caitlin Lau, and now Stormzy. His mission doesn't contribute to anything. And worst of all, despite the fact Fall on My Enemies is an absolute banger, it doesn't play on London's radios while you drive around. You hear it once, and that's it. Why did you let them do this to you, Stormzy?
How their freedoms will be under attack. This is what's happening. This is coming your way.
Like we previously discussed earlier, far-right movements, and Brexit specifically, really concentrated on a sense of patriotism, which has morphed into nationalism over the years which followed. A lot of this has been pushed by the likes of Boris Johnson, who, as Foreign Secretary, would quote imperialist poetry during diplomatic missions overseas. The London School of Economics, after undertaking a study into nationalist identities, found that a lot of nationalism can be focused on 3 words. Britain is best. Winston Churchill is a hero who saved the world from the Nazis. Don't ask about his racism or the fact he's been quoted as respecting Hitler's motives. The Queen is untouchable. Being born into power is a good thing. One day you'll be born into power. We need to be insular. The UK is perfect as it is, and change from the outside is a bad thing. Don't ask why, it just is. Legion wraps itself up in a cosy blanket of British isms. Albion itself takes its name from a historically romantic alternative name for the country. In the wake of the UK's statue debate of whether or not we should immortalise and celebrate slave traders, it seems like many of these statues have been replaced with hologram versions. You can't push those into the sea. This stuff is a little on the nose, but points to Ubisoft for effort. The aesthetic of London really focuses on nationalist language and issues. Nationalism in the UK has taken many forms over the 21st century, from the British National Party, to the English Defence League, to the United Kingdom Independence Party, to terrorist enablers Britain First, and lately Nigel Farage's Brexit Party, a private company who didn't even have a manifesto in the most recent election and is funded by money which can't be traced.
Are you happy if large sections of our towns and cities are non-English speaking? So you feel totally comfortable with that, do you?
One of these days, someone's going to punch you really, really hard and it's going to make my year. Well, a far-right militia is kind of in Legion. Like, Albion obviously takes a starring role, but they're not similar in their presentation to the gammons we see marching in the streets, fighting with the police and barricading their precious statues. One of Hamish Balaji's missions factors in a small group called the EPAF, the English Patriotic Action Front, who run around punching immigrants and shouting, "England first, England first." Sounds like the sort of groups we see today. You go to Kennington Park and find an EPAF rally, and you can even speak to some of the knobends protesting with signs labelled "Britain for Britons." It's actually a really fair representation of these kinds of groups, except the signs are all spelled correctly. This is a great little idea. What are we going to do? Intercept their headquarters, mess with them and show them up for the Egypts that they are? Oh, no, they're being manipulated by SIRS, so we break into a police station and assassinate their leader. Not quite the ruin Tommy Robinson's Day escapism I was hoping for. Albion has dissolved Parliament, which makes it kind of bizarre that politicians are still wandering the streets working as politicians after 10 years. This is a very convenient way for the game to not discuss the government themselves. The Prime Minister is nowhere to be seen, and the podcasts continue to reflect on this. Where is the Prime Minister? This is a question which is never resolved. Apparently he's been missing for 10 years. Did Nigel Cass kill him? Is his head in a jar? Who knows? Because Ubisoft are so terrified of wading through the Brexit pool and dealing with the weeds and leaves which have landed there after the storm. One of the things the Leave campaign promised to the people of the UK was sovereignty and control over our laws. Is Albion establishing a dictatorship over one city supposed to represent this? Who knows? I imagine Ubisoft doesn't. Nothing in this dying world is more dear to a Brit's sense of Britishness than the National Health Service. During COVID-19, it's hard not to get emotional in the earlier days when we were out applauding our key workers, and the most effective Brexit ads were the ones that talked about the NHS. I mean, they really doubled down on how great Brexit would be for doctors and nurses. Just take this ad.
Every week, the United Kingdom sends £350 million of taxpayers' money to the EU. That's the cost of a fully staffed, brand new hospital.
Ah yes, the silky-voiced lady talks about how we send £350 million to the EU every year, and how not paying our subscription fees to the largest trading body in the world would free up all that dosh to invest in our deprived NHS. Of course, as we know now, that's a fantasy and a lie, but it worked. The big red bus, illegally using the NHS logo, worked. There's a deep-seated fear in the UK that the NHS is on the verge of being privatised and will no longer be completely owned by the taxpayer. It was a chokehold during the UK's latest election, when Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn obtained private documents linking Boris Johnson and Donald Trump, and the likelihood that the NHS would be up for sale in a post-Brexit trade agreement with the US. Perhaps the one silver lining of COVID-19 is it's reinvigorated the country's adoration for its largest socialist policy, free medical care for all, and slammed the brakes on any NHS privatisation. But, as Legion accurately presents, the NHS is already a little bit privatised. Pieces of it aren't actually owned by the general public. In Legion, an artificial intelligence has been leased out by Skye Larson inside St Thomas's Hospital. Yes, that very same hospital with the money dandruff flapping away. It's gone rogue due to the lack of regulation surrounding business dealings with private companies, and is accidentally killing coma patients, so we need to shut it down. It's not exactly the same as when the government sold an entire hospital, Hitchingbrook, to a private company, Circle, back in 2012, or the fact that 18% of the NHS has already been privatised piece by piece, but I admire the effort, even if it was most likely by accident rather than on purpose. I fully imagine Ubisoft weren't thinking, the NHS, that's important, we need to look at the impact of Brexit on the NHS, but instead scribbled on the whiteboard, what if a doctor robot killed poorly people instead? But regardless, this is one tick I can put next to Legion. It has a full mission which presents a possible circumstance of privatisation, albeit another pulpy one. Once again, the bug is what provides us with a lot of our context regarding medicines. There's a whole episode on the matter, that there are medicine shortages being reported all over the country, but Albion is shouting about how it's fake news, and there are clearly medicines, just look over there. This is, of course, another one of the touted possibilities in the event that the UK left the EU without a deal, so it's nice that it's here, even if it is just background noise and flavour. Overall, I can't complain too much about how Legion presents the NHS to us. It's far from perfect, but there's worse representation of the big issues to focus on.
No sign of Malik, Mum. Nice clear shot on this dead sick prick, though.
Don't tempt me.
So, back to Richard Malik. We agree to meet him in Trafalgar Square as part of our espionage plot, which has been hobbling along while we look at the politics of the thing. But when we get there, he sets off a bomb to frame DedSec once again and kill Emma Child. Our operative needs to desperately dash away from the crime scene, but oh whoops, my operative died, so I guess I completed the mission, good job me! In a quest for revenge, DedSec break into the SIRS headquarters, again we're repeating locations from before, and try to steal proof that he was behind the bombing. And the Richard Malik, boss fight is once again analogous with the mission design of the entire game. We do a line puzzle and then run around in a bloody circle for what feels like half an hour while Bagley does his big hack download thing. Drones keep spawning to interrupt our percentage bar, obnoxiously covering half of the screen, so we need to jog up to a drone, shoot it down, jog up to another drone and shoot it down. If you are lucky, you can betray the drones to shoot each other whilst you just stand there and suck a thumb. riveting gameplay. Luckily for us, Bagley's ready to do the actually fun bit too. Malik, in a panic, grabs an empty suitcase and tries to escape, but in an amusing turn of events, Bagley is able to trap him in his own car and drives him over to DedSec HQ. What a fun piece of not gameplay. I'm really glad I wasn't doing line puzzles while Bagley got to have fun with Malik. Interrogating Richard Malik, he has a right good giggle because it turns out he's not Zero Day after all, and all of this has been a massive waste of time where we've learned absolutely nothing. I'm not kidding when I say there was absolutely no point in doing any of this. Part 8. E is for the ending. When I say Legion's final hour has all the gravitas of an unbendy banana, I'm being kind. It's actually more offensive than that, considering it's asked the player to sink hours into endless busy work, and as far as finales go, this is the best we can come up with. It is bogged down by the sort of repetition we've seen elsewhere in the form of the Spiderbot, the third-person shooting, the line puzzles, and the stand near checkpoint while Bagley hackathons. So forgive me because I don't have any wider analysis to present in this part, other than how dull all of this is. So we're going to walk through the closing hours together because I had to experience this, so goddammit, you have to as well. Nigel Cass promises to double Albion boots on the ground following an attack on his life from someone we don't know, but you wouldn't know it from driving about London. The city doesn't evolve whatsoever until the closing moments, whether Nigel's in a megalomaniacal rage or he's dead. London feels static as a city, and the closing hours prove this. It ultimately turns out that he's already launched Project Themis, and all of that work we did to create a micro-drone and shut down the servers was a waste of time. So we need to go to London Bridge and upload a virus to the antenna sitting there. This involves shooting all of the Albion guards, waiting for Bagley to hack the thing, and then standing there, in the open, shooting more guards and drones because Legion has clearly stopped caring about its mission design if it ever did before. This section is stupidly difficult because of the wide open areas and the lack of cover, and I lost 4 operatives during it because you could just get bombarded from all sides. And you can't even drop to the floor below because apparently that means you're too far away from the antenna. Because you're being bombarded, it's impossible to be non-lethal here. The only way to overcome this is by blasting guards with the light machine gun because it does the most damage, and my operatives have done all of the side quests and amassed a good chunk of the tech points, so I was using about 80% of the game's toys, but it simply didn't matter. Was this playtested? Cass has Claire Waters of Buccaneer Radio murdered because she had some evidence that he was behind the zero-day bombings. So we find her iPad, and guess what you need to do here? Wait for Bagley to hack it while you shoot waves of enemies. We see that Cass made a deal with Zero Day to let them plant the bombs that they already hired Clan Kelly to plant in return for access to Filament, SIRS's profiling technology, which Zero Day can hack. I know what you're thinking, that makes no sense, and you're right, but just wait until we talk to Zero Day themselves. We broadcast the clip to Piccadilly Circus to wake the people of London up to Albion's terror, but I'm slightly confused as to what this is supposed to do. Hamish Balaji's voice booms out over London, and we get the trademarked hacktivist line, "DedSec has given you the truth, do as you will." There's a beat, and then he rumbles,
Actually, fuck that. Resist.
What is this supposed to do? The people of London already know that Albion are just the worst. The city is covered in protests. People are losing their jobs, sleeping on the streets, and constantly harassed by Albion in broad daylight. Albion is not being very secretive about how fascistic they are. If you punched me in the face every day for 10 years, I wouldn't be sitting around waiting for a phone call where you plan to blow up my house to hate you. I would already hate you and be ready to fight. It would be different if London was covered in people who believed in Albion, but the only group who actually agree with them are Clan Kelly, who are criminals, and the EFAP, who are buried away under side missions. We've just spent the whole game liberating boroughs and having the population rally to our cause. London is ready to rise up. Broadcasting this does absolutely nothing to the game world except force Nigel Cass to barricade himself in White Tower. He's gone full despot, arming himself to the teeth in his secret bunker, and this is not the ending a dystopian Brexit game called for, because do you want to know what Nigel Cass's boss fight is? If you follow me on Twitter, you already know. It's a line puzzle while battling a tank, and there are henchmen for us to shoot at for good measure. This is Nigel Faraging, Boris Johnsoning, Jacob Rees-Mogging, Donald Trumping pathetic. Why has this hacktivist game ended with our baddie in a tank? Why does the game think the line puzzles are so magical that they should be included in a boss fight? Why does Watchdogs Legion have a boss fight at all? It is the only game in the series which has a boss, and this isn't even the end of the game. No, I'm not done. It breaks every rule in the boss fight guide. Minions to battle rather than concentrating on the villain. Your normal attacks can't hurt the boss. The boss doesn't move, it just sits there. You have to engage with a lukewarm puzzle of which the game has thrown so many at you that it has absolutely no challenge by this point. There's no creative thinking here. You don't take Cass down in any interesting way. You just blow up his tank, and he dies.
We're off to a good start.
Oh, it's a thankless burden, and the people will hate you for it in the end, even when it's for their own bloody good.
Killing Nigel Cass, everyone at DedSec thinks it's a bloody job well done. It's like suddenly everyone's got selective amnesia and has forgotten what the point of the story was to begin with. Are we just forgetting about Zero Day? So, anyway, we have a party, but the mission description for the party is also really bizarre. Why is it spoiling that something's going to go wrong? Rather than actually enjoy ourselves, like perhaps play darts or some drinking games, we're explicitly told by our objective markers that the point of all this is to chat to the 3 actual characters in DedSec, you know, the ones we can't play as. But before we can get too barmy, Zero Day crashes the party and steals all of our data. Bagley traces the signal and boom, it's off to the Stockwell war bunker to unmask Zero Day. And breaking in, we get, by far, the worst twist of the entire Watch Dogs trilogy.
So, impressed?
Depends. What does Drill Britannia do?
It's society's big wipe. While DedSec runs around fixing bugs, I'm deleting the source code.
Was anyone surprised that Sabine was Zero Day? I sure wasn't. I distinctly remember messaging my pal after meeting Sabine and saying that I was 99% sure that she was going to be Zero Day. I'm not going to name him here, but you know who you are and you owe me a tenner. There are 3 major giveaways to this. The first is that Sabine has been weirdly silent since we took down Nigel Cass. She doesn't attend the party and she doesn't say a word after Zero Day hacks our stuff. The second is that she is the only character in the entire game who you never meet in person. Gosh, I wonder why. And the third is a more depressing giveaway. This is a Ubisoft game, and Ubisoft games have to present 2 sides of the coin, don't they? It's the sort of whataboutisms that define a Ubisoft story, because in a game story which is all about an authoritarian dictatorship, they just had to find a way to not take a stand on anything, just in case some of the player base got upset and Ubisoft were presenting any sort of bias or opinion in their presentation of a private military company locking down London. Yeah, Albion's bad, but what about the rebellion? What about DedSec? They're terrorists. Look, maybe both sides are wrong.
You fuckhead. That is the stupidest thing you interpreted there.
Sabine seems to have a complete character shift after her reveal. She's certifiably insane and bloodthirsty, and what exactly has her plan been? It's such a convoluted mess. So she made a deal with Cass to make a deal with Clan Kelly to set off bombs in London so Albion could achieve power. She did all of this in order to get access to the filament codes. Then, with those filament codes, she recruited a brand new DedSec to investigate her plan, and then intends to use the filament codes to hack all of CTOS and just kill thousands of people. Because of what? Why did she need to recruit DedSec? She isn't using any of the tech we stole for her plan, and she already had the filament codes from her deal with Cass. If she was going to turn all of Albion's tech against itself, she could have just killed Cass and taken down Albion that way. Both her plan and our involvement in the game up until now has been a colossal waste of time in the grand scheme of things. The level design when escaping from her bunker is exactly what we would come to expect from Legion by this point. There are no options. The game just turns into a shooter. We can't stealthily escape because we only have one way out, a long corridor, then that's why there are crates and crates of ammunition just littered about the place. London does evolve here in a scripted sequence, momentarily. In an almost identical state to the end of Watchdogs 1, CTOS has unravelled, but differently to Watchdogs 1, none of it is targeting us. At least as Aiden Pearce, all of the traffic light hacking and gas pipe bombing was now standing between us and our end goal. But with London, all of this feels like a carefully scripted set piece, with cars crashing into walls and laser beams shooting out of the sky. The final mission is the second and final moment where we get to flit between two of our DedSec operatives, whoever you're playing as currently and whoever you're playing as the most. So, naturally, I have my Albion gunner and my charming spy. Bagley comes to the realization that Sabine is using him to destroy CTOS, so in order to stop her, we'll need to kill him. The handsome spy breaks into Bagley's servers while the Albion gunner does our final bit of active gameplay. A line puzzle, followed immediately by waiting for a hack to happen while we shoot drones. The entire ending of Legion is as on rails as the beginning, and this is exactly what I meant when I highlighted that the game's first 10 minutes were effective in tutorializing what the game feel is. Because this gameplay as Dalton Wolf is easily transferable to this gameplay as my endgame operative. Confronting Sabine atop the tower, she monologues at us about a new world order before, in a cutscene, our operative hacks the roof and she falls from the top of Bloom Tower like a Disney villain, which is apt because that's all the depth her character was afforded. We're not done yet though. Flashing back to Handsome Spy, we slowly take out all of Bagley's servers and ultimately destroy him. Everyone's crying, but Bagley is snarky to the very end because a lot of his dialogue was written by Yahtzee Croshaw of Zero Punctuation fame. Yes, that is true. And considering Bagley has been our personal assistant for the entire game, this should have been emotional. Hell, as a scene, it hits all of the right kill the friendly AI beats that you see in science fiction, but because it's trodden down by a crap twist and 50 line puzzles and 50,000 shoot the drone sections, I was just glad it's all over.
Don't chop me up!
Bagley? Is that really you?
I'm Bagley, your personal assistant.
What the fuck? So after all of that, with the entire weight of the game's ending resting on the shoulders of the player caring about Bagley dying, it turns out that nah, who cares? Bagley doesn't die. We just reawaken him through the power of AI, and it's not even an out-of-the-box, has-forgotten DedSec Bagley. It's the snarky Bagley. Well, cool. Goodbye, emotional payoff. I can't help but be reminded of C-3PO's memory wipe in The Rise of Skywalker. Who possibly thought this was a good thing to do? Ah, but of course, resurrecting Bagley is necessary, isn't it? Because Sabine turned out to be a baddie, so she can't give us missions anymore, and Bagley needs to be there for all the content updates that we've been promised, but haven't spat out of Ubisoft's toilets 4 months later, like all live service-esque games. Bagley needs to survive the end of the game because Ubisoft are so proud of their play-as-anyone system that the game doesn't have a central character who's ready to get involved in any new stories off their own back, or because the story calls for it, because once again, we're a vessel, inhabiting a fleshy husk whose only responsibility in the whole game is to follow Bagley's orders. Is this the worst AAA ending of last generation? It's a serious question. I'm racking my brains here, and even Marvel's Avengers didn't have such a grotesque final hour as far as the plot was concerned. I didn't suspect that Legion would leave such a bad taste in my mouth. I expected an interesting, open world with some fun hacking gameplay and, if I was lucky, a curious examination of a post-Brexit Britain. I didn't expect the game to fail in all three areas and have an actively worse story than Watchdogs 1 to boot. It's the worst game in the series. At least Aiden Pearce, with all of his gravelly rage, had interesting side quests, the ability to enter shops, and a story that made sense when the credits rolled. It's funny, I feel more deflated with Watchdogs Legion's post-Brexit Britain than I do with Brexit itself. Maybe it's because my abject rage at the lies and the xenophobia and the meticulously crafted division in the country has had time to acclimatise for me. Watchdogs Legion had time too. Watchdogs Legion, if the rumours are to be believed, had over 5 years to get this right. But in the end, it's not a game which is fair to anyone. Remainers, Brexiteers, players, or, yes, the developers. It's bloated, it's buggy, it's boring, and the presentation here is borderline offensive, no matter where your political allegiance lies, because the politics of it all was used as a marketing tool. Very serious issues were used as a marketing tool to make idiots buy it. And I guess that makes me an idiot. At least I got my copy secondhand. When I was 11 years old and watched School of Rock for the first time, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that the man Dewey Finn was talking about would be a game company, but that's what Ubisoft has become. They're no longer the publisher which created Rayman or Assassin's Creed 2 or Splinter Cell. They're a petri dish for abuse, corporate greed, and now the sort of company which looks at Brexit and thinks, yeah, that'll do. And that'll do isn't good enough anymore. Watchdogs deserved better, and so did the UK. Thanks for watching. I've been overwhelmed by the feedback you've given on my previous videos, and I just wanted to say how much it means that you've taken the time to stick with me. If you liked this, why not check out my critiques of Spider-Man Miles Morales or Jedi Fallen Order, which I mentioned. Like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps me out, and as always, take care.